Okay, welcome to the Committee of the Whole for the City of Urbana. My name's Dennis Roberts, and I'm the chair today. Very democratic, we always share the chair, and so it's my turn. So I would like to call the City Council's Committee of the Whole to order. Would our clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Jacobson,
Here.
Mr. Lewis,
Here.
Miss Marlin,
Here.
Mr. Roberts,
Here.
Mr. Smythe, Miss Stevenson, Mayor Pressing.
Here.
Okay. Are there changes or additions to the agenda? Apparently not. And the next item is a staff report. Who would like to start? Tom Carino, are you going to tell us something important?
Of course.
Of course. Thank you, sir.
I would like to give a brief monthly economic development report, and then I will turn it over to Brandon Boyes for the Cunningham Avenue report, and if Bill has anything to report. But first, just briefly, the economic development report. Everyone should have received this electronically. Just to highlight a few items. We have a new law office in town. Langlacker Law Office is located in the County Plaza building. The Tin Roof Tavern is now open for business at 604 North Cunningham Avenue. Armored Gopher has relocated to a new space at the Northgate Plaza, which is at 1508 North Cunningham. They've outgrown their old space and are now occupying a larger space, so that's a great success story of a growing business. JSM Development has announced the execution of a lease with CoFusion for Gregory Place West. That'll be a great addition to the two buildings on the west side of, east side of campus. So that's a great addition that will concentrate on sushi and stir fries, approximately 90 seating for 90 people. Also, Einstein Brothers Bagels is opening a second location at the Union, and that has been a real success story and a very successful franchisee for the Einstein Bagels company. That's all I have to report. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Does anybody have a question for Tom? Really, we saw a lot of progress and a lot of activity this year, or this month, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other staff report? Brandon Boyes is going to come forward. This is the Cunningham Avenue Beautification Improvement Status Report. Oh, Bill Gray. All right, Bill Gray. Start with Bill Gray.
About 6 weeks ago, we had talked about sewer lateral report, and staff is still working hard on that report and getting some survey data from communities, and got sidetracked a little bit this past week to work on Kent Street. So we're going to have the report ready for April 22nd, Monday, 2 weeks from now. And we'll be able to hopefully answer a lot of the questions that were raised and looking at sewer lateral city responsibility within city right-of-way and what those costs and impacts will be. So that's been postponed to April 22nd, Monday.
Good. I'm sure we'll all be interested in that. All right, and then Mr. Brandon Boyes. Is it your turn? Go ahead.
Yeah.
I guess.
All right, I'm going to give you an update on the Cunningham Avenue Beautification Status Report. So staff have been working diligently to implement the recommendations of the 2008 Cunningham Avenue Beautification Study. This most recent effort was really started with a review of the document in February of last year. So it's been a little more than a year. And we reviewed a lot of the concepts in there for feasibility and selected projects that met the intent of the plan. So the main four features, just if I can summarize them, of the original study were to have a prevalent public art presence along the corridor, to increase sidewalk connectivity, to have some landscaping, and to close some curb cuts for safety. And of course, an emphasis on improving the appearance of the corridor overall. And so from that project, staff is currently pursuing a variety of projects. So I've grouped them here. We'll talk about some infrastructure projects. We'll talk about some public and private beautification, and then I'll touch on some site marketing and code enforcement activities that are happening as well. So first, infrastructure. Originally, I guess as late as February of last year, Public Works was pursuing an ITEP grant for a major side path that would extend north of 74, north of Perkins, where there currently isn't sidewalks. However, that ITEP grant wasn't going to be a go, so we've scaled it down, and we're looking at a lower cost alternative that's going to fill the immediate gap in the infrastructure. This lower cost option will still have a multi-use path that's consistent with the bicycle plan, and it's going to position the city for additional grants. In the future, we'll be better positioned to try to extend that north of 74 in the future. That same stretch north of Perkins up to 74, Kenyon Heater, the side roads there. There's currently a project out to bid, or excuse me, it's already been awarded, planned to be constructed for street lighting for that same stretch. So again, filling a gap in the infrastructure that was present. And lastly, on infrastructure, curb cut closures. Staff in Community Development and Public Works reached out to 12 different potential curb cut closures on different private properties. We reached out to those owners because we don't necessarily have a strong ability to require closures. Maybe in the context of redevelopment agreement, the city has some more that it can require of a property owner. So at this phase, it was really necessary to get buy-in, and staff have been successful in getting buy-in from five curb cut closures, I think on 4 properties. So definitely some positive progress on this front, and it appears we're going to be able to couple those with the sidewalk bids to hopefully realize some savings as well. On to public and private beautification. The original study called for a pretty significant landscaping feature of full-size trees along both sides of Cunningham. This was found to be infeasible for lack of right-of-way, and also because of the presence of aerial power lines on the east side of the road. So Mike Brunk and other staff at Public Works took a look at this, and the recommendation we came back with was to pursue perennial plantings, prairie plantings, like you see out on Philo Road, and that looks very nice. It's a lot less, it requires a lot less space. It's a lot more adaptive. You can fit it in areas. However, the implementation of it isn't necessarily as clear. One of the things we identified in that landscaping study is that there's going to be an ongoing cost to maintenance. And that's a discussion that's still ongoing that we don't necessarily have an easy answer to. However, a project presented itself at the gateway intersection of where Cunningham meets Vine at University. The University of Illinois Employees Credit Union has stepped up to the plate. Board member Joe Vitosky, their CEO E.J. Donaghy, and their facilities manager Randy Wells have put together a proposal of about $60,000 in landscaping improvements for the corner there that they've purchased. They've put a parking lot on it. There's some public art on there. They're dedicated to having public art there in the future. They had a shared vision for perennial plantings that would match the conclusion that staff had come to independently. And so we are excited to work with them and to match their landscaping improvements on their private property in the public right-of-way, and hopefully supplement it with some public art, which I'll talk about next. Well, in addition, when the credit union reached out to us, we realized that it was a great opportunity to reach out to the other property owners, and the credit union has been very supportive of reaching out to these owners as well. So we spoke with owners at all 4 corners. There aren't the same opportunities at the other corners. I'm not sure that we're at the same place of willingness or eagerness to make an investment at this time because of just where some of those properties are at. However, there's certainly potential to do this more in the future, and so staff will consider additional improvements, particularly of landscaping, in the event that there's an investment or willingness by the property owners to, I guess, to step it up and request the city do more. Another thing to consider is that the southeast corner of this intersection is Boneyard Phase 5. So we certainly have our hands full already with the current phase of the Boneyard, but that is another major component of the total impact of the visual appearance of this intersection. And this intersection is really the punctuation point of the experience of driving, of exiting 74, coming down Cunningham Avenue. We hope to have features along the avenue, public art features in particular, to clean up the appearance overall, and then to see an impact at this intersection. And at this point, the credit union's investment in their landscaping is going to be probably the most dynamic component of that right now. We really want to build off of that. And then the underpass really serves as the gateway to the downtown. Mike Brunk did this study on landscaping. This is what helped us come to the conclusion that landscaping was going to be a good fit for this site. As you can see, he approached this with a broader vision that perhaps we could come up with scenarios where we can do more landscaping. However, we do need to address that long-term maintenance cost issue. On the issue of public art, there were quite a few dramatic proposals in the original study. Sculptures, coloring of pavement, and unfortunately many of those specific designs were found to be infeasible, either from IDOT approval or from a cost perspective. So staff have really focused on what alternatives can we get done in a reasonable time frame. We had originally looked at a banner concept because the corridor is very uniformly lined with light poles that we thought could have been a striking visual impact as you drive down the corridor. However, a structural analysis of those poles showed that we can't, within code, add additional strain that a banner would create on those poles. So we've had to discard that option. The new light poles that are going in north of Perkins are going to be able to withstand those wind strains, and so we do hope to have a banner feature for at least that 2 blocks or so. So our current proposal is based around the work of Christina McClelland and the Public Art Commission for murals on glass, and these have just been really outstanding visual presence in our downtown for relatively low cost. And as you might guess, it's a lot easier to submit a 2D piece of art, either a photo or something that was generated on a computer, than it is to have the expertise to design a sculpture for outdoor use. So it's actually a much more open submission process as well. So the concept we've been throwing around is the idea of having I guess just structures that purely for the purpose of exhibiting this kind of work. It uses a process similar to that which is used to wrap buses. It's a vinyl adhesive. We could possibly do something more substantial, possibly at the credit union site where there's multiple frames. But in the upper right-hand corner, you can see sort of a mock-up of what a single element might look like. And the base of this is really not going to be a larger impact than a current sculpture would be. And the cost, again, ideally this would be programmatically supported by business investment, and we'd actually be asking less of business owners to support these on a regular basis than is currently required to have a sculpture on your property. In addition, these could be changed on an annual basis. You could imagine work by school children, work that focuses on a theme. There's a lot of interesting things, and again, the goal would be to have these repeated down the corridor, and then the punctuation point comes at the gateway intersection. In addition, there were some concepts, again, for a substantial presence of like light poles bending over the road here. Unfortunately, we weren't able to pursue that, so we've been talking to Norfolk Southern about painting the overpass, which was one option also presented in signage and wayfinding, and also a freestanding sign. We need to do more work to find out which is the most feasible option to do that, but again, we think that this is we'll be modifying the original concept to blend into the themes explored in the signage and wayfinding study. One small win that was also in signage and wayfinding that was pursued as part of the Cunningham efforts was to contact IDOT to change the wording on the sign, on the aerial sign there at the intersection. This is actually the photoshopped image that appears in signage and wayfinding study. It currently says Urbana Business District, but we'll get that changed to Downtown Urbana hopefully in 2014 when IDOT replaces the sign. They'll just change the wording for us. Site marketing. There are numerous sites that are either underutilized or are good potential development sites that perhaps weren't being marketed as well as they could. Through a lot of effort by Kate Ferrer, our economic development associate, we've reached out to a lot of these property owners. In addition, in reaching out to those property owners and creating some sort of baseline market presence for their properties, we've hit on a few opportunities. In this example, this is property primarily owned by Peter Lasaris. That's Country Financial, so the large white building on the left. He and his adjacent property owners had got to talking, and they're interested in a potential full site redevelopment. And we talked about the potential of a street vacation. It certainly seems feasible. So we put it out there as one site, and this then attracted the interest of a commercial broker, and they're now being represented by a commercial broker. So we think that they're in a much better position to see some development occur here of a much larger scale. For signage code enforcement, there were some existing signs that were vacant, a little bit of an eyesore. And to accelerate that process, we created a small incentive program that sort of coupled the information about the fact that the sign's not conforming with a small incentive for its removal or replacement. So far, we've had 2 owners comply with this on a voluntary basis, and 3 others have expressed interest in the program. And it's a pretty striking visual difference. So to summarize, we have 3 major infrastructure projects that are moving forward. They expect them to be completed this calendar year. For public and private beautification, it's more of a mixed bag. There's some more research that needs to be done for the corners of the Gateway intersection. More options to study the Vine Street underpass beautification. We need to study the public art components more. But as you can see, there's some good potential that we could move forward on these. And hopefully have feasibility assessed within the next few months. In addition, the credit union is moving forward with the beautification of their private property. And lastly, the signage and marketing, or the signage enforcement and the marketing of vacant properties is going to continue. That's an ongoing function of the planning division and the economic development division. So just to reiterate what you can expect from us going forward, the infrastructure projects, the credit union landscaping, and the signage removal and upgrades, you can expect all of those to happen this calendar year. The feasibility of public art and the Vine Street underpass, that's going to be, we hope to have feasibility determined this summer so we can either be scheduling or going back to the drawing board. And in addition, we're going to keep our eye out and keep talking to those property owners along the corridor to see if there's going to be an opportunity for investment that the city can match and try to overcome that cost barrier of long-term maintenance of landscaping. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah. Questions for the presentation? Charlie.
Yeah, Brendan, thank you. Good update. The one thing that clearly like to get done is some of the beautification stuff, the phase 1, phase 2 that Mike Brunk identified. Do you have some budget numbers for that?
For landscaping?
Yeah, did you guys work up any estimates of what it would take?
Mike actually analyzed the entire corridor and came up with some numbers per location. I don't have that number as far as the entire location, but we have a basic number for each location where there's those opportunities for landscaping. So,
Will they be appearing then as choices to us later this summer or into the new budget, or are you trying to work them in phases?
I think where we're at is we wanted to contact property owners to see what the interest might be. There's been a couple other property owners we've talked to. There was one plan that was in the close to the $10,000 plan, and we decided jointly, the property owner and the city, to not forego that in recognition of the greater marketing of the 3-acre site that was shown earlier. So this is TIF4 funded, and what it will show in the budget at this point I can't answer. But at least we have an idea as to basic costs, what there would be. But the real decision that staff needs to decide and recommend to council is, as Brandon mentioned before, we can't just install landscaping up and down the corridor without a maintenance plan, and who's going to pay for that? And we don't have an answer for you tonight on that.
One other obstacle to larger scale landscaping is that there isn't consistent right-of-way along the corridor. There are stretches where there's literally no room to even do perennial landscaping. So that's in addition to Bill's comments, that's another major concern, is if we could actually have a consistent theme throughout the corridor.
Yeah, and so can I ask a question? Does that mean that even though the right-of-way between the sidewalk and the curb is really the city's right-of-way, and we could be planting there, we don't have a way of supporting the planting? It's the financial problem of sustainability to make that change. Even though there's TIF4 funding, wouldn't that be part of the budget of a TIF4 funding project, or not?
I don't know that TIF historically has supported operation and maintenance of landscaping. They've done the capital improvements through the years.
Yeah.
It's the long-term O&M, and at some point TIF4 will expire. What happens beyond that?
Other questions? Diane?
Well, I just wanted to thank Brandon for your report, but also thank the U of I Employees Credit Union for really taking the lead and coming to the city with an idea for improving their corner. And I think maybe the best route to go, given our financial challenges, would be to focus on the gateway to the corridor, which was 5 points, and then maybe when someone first comes off the interstate, and then focus on infrastructure like the curb cuts in between. And the landscaping would be nice, but probably not affordable at this time. But I really appreciate the credit union's investment in this corner and their vision for it. So I think it's a great start, and I hope we can work with the other property owners at 5 points, which I guess is now 4 points. But but anyway, it would be great to focus on this gateway. So I hope that's where we can put our efforts.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have next on the agenda approval of the minutes of our previous meeting from March 25th, 2013. Anybody want to make a motion on that or
So
comments?
moved.
Okay, Brandon and Robert Lewis. Are there corrections, Brandon?
I had just a quick question. I really appreciated the level of detail in these minutes and wondered if the clerk wanted to comment. I mean, hopefully this is a new standard and we'll continue with it. It gave a little bit more detail of, oh, somebody asked a question and it was answered. And I found that incredibly helpful, I think, for the public record when people go back years from now and say, wait, what did we talk about? These minutes, to me, are so much more helpful. Is this the plan going forward?
No.
I hope it's something we consider. I know long ago we used to have really good minutes that were detailed and told the story of what was discussed. And these minutes were not too lengthy, but they did capture that meaningful information. So obviously this is something the future council will decide, but I think I loved these minutes and thought it's a great public record.
The reason for the minutes being the length that they are right now and the detail is simply because for the historical purposes of our sister city and the people that we had here visiting, their comments and things that was asked of them and how they responded. That's why we did it that way. We used to put more information in the minutes. However, many of the council members years ago decided that they would change their comments in those minutes by saying what they actually did not say in the meeting and wanting to make it appear that they had said it that way. So we decided at that time that we would only put the action taken and the motions that was made, and that's what we're going to go back to.
Oh. Okay, Diane Marlin.
Well, now I hate to even say this, but
What you meant to say?
what I really said at page 3, last paragraph, it says, Ms. Marlin expressed interest and had questions on the way the snow is removed. How does Public Works decide which streets get done first? And my question was, why, and I was reflecting what a constituent asked me, why the cul-de-sacs are not plowed at the same time as the nearby streets. And this
That's right.
basically says why the cul-de-sacs are not plowed, which is not true. So I really asked why they weren't done at the same time as the nearby streets for clarification. So, not to put words in your mouth, but those were the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, okay. That's a valid correction, I think. Yeah, we do have those. Okay, Eric, did you want to say anything or not?
Nothing serious. I was just thinking, Phyllis, that this is a good example of you gave somebody an inch and now they want a mile.
Okay. Well, I thought they were pretty incredibly nice too, and I appreciate the depth of interaction between the Sister City program and us. All right. So let's have a vote on adopting the minutes with a change in the dialogue about the cul-de-sacs. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we adopt those minutes. All right, it's time for public input, and I have received a fair amount of public input on 3 different topics. Let's start with the smallest topic. This is a change of liquor licensing, and, well, let's see. Okay, you're going to, actually, this person would like to speak at the time, so I'll save that. All right, 2 individuals wanted to indicate an opinion, and this would be Bishop King James Underwood and Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood, and they've indicated that they would like to, would not want to choose to address the committee, but they wish to say that they are, they continue to be concerned about the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer resolution and look for some kind of favorable result.
Just say what you said. Just say what you said. That's just simple.
I do not choose to address the committee, but ask.
Who said that? Who said that?
This is Dr. Reverend Evelyn Underwood. But I ask that my position be entered into the record as follows in support of resolve favorable to the residents. And that's the only written-in comment. Dr. Bishop King Underwood merely said he did not wish to choose to address the committee. And again, it was on the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer concerns. Okay. All right, so we're going to continue now into the main body of our agenda, starting with ordinance. Oh, is there any other public input? Let me ask that. I guess I have one item that did come up in the newspaper. This is the Daily Illini of today. On the first page, there was an extensive article about the Urbana Landmark Hotel. The Alumni Tap Bar is opened. This is on the bottom of the first page. The liquor license has allowed the owner of the hotel to open his pub, and the first day it was opened on Saturday, 550 people attended, and there's a very good article about that event and his plans for the hotel, which I encourage everybody to look at.
I got one quickie.
Yes, Robert Lewis.
I just wanted to remind everybody the month of April is Jazz Appreciation Month, and support your jazz musicians, whoever they might be. Go buy some records or do something.
Dennis.
And we also have an election coming up. Oh, Mark Munson.
I just wanted to mention on the Alumni Tap that It's not open for regular business for probably about another week. He has to get a point-of-sale system installed, but it will be opening shortly. It was open this Saturday for a special event.
Oh, very good. Okay, so we're looking forward to that evolution. And then probably it should be mentioned that there is a municipal election tomorrow and that we encourage people to go out and exercise their right to vote. All right. First, ordinance number 2013-03-025, an ordinance amending Schedule J of Section 23-183 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code prohibiting parking at all times on certain streets relating to Kinch. We'll have Bill Graves. Are you going to give us an overview? And then we have
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who'd like to speak.
Okay. Last Monday, Council asked staff to provide a variety of information. In your packet before you is information including the bicycle master plan, and which shows the specific suggested improvements in the city to fulfill the bike master plan. We also included the methods and letters of correspondence on 3 different occasions to property owners on Kent Street. And we also included the question of could this be a bike route? Should this be a combination parking bike lane? Is there another street between High Cross Road and Philo Road that would be suitable for bike lanes between Washington Street and Florida? We also asked the principal author of the bicycle master plan to respond to those questions, and although it wasn't in the specific Thursday packet, it was in the subsequent information material emailed or sent out to you all from Gabe Lewis, transportation planner at Kuwat's. I won't read these responses, but if you have questions on these responses, I'd try to answer them. I think it's not desirous per the plan that we would consider bike route in lieu of bike lanes. I think it's self-evident that the combination parking bike lane would not work because of the space limitations of the widths of the road. And I think there's a lot of, we're trying to be consistent throughout the implementation of this plan throughout the city, and to be consistent, a lot of our determination of what type of facility goes where is based on a bicycle level of service. And the bicycle level of service is based on a lot of criteria that's spelled out in our master plan, and we're careful about trying to be consistent with that throughout the area. But bottom line is staff still supports bike lanes on this stretch of Kent Street and feels that's important in keeping with the overall objectives for the master plan, and in particular to improve bicycle circulation between Washington and Florida. Just a quick story, but as I went home tonight, leaving the office about 5:30, and yes, it's a nice spring day, and people are out running and walking and what have you, and in my stretch of Washington Street, heading westbound between Philo Road and Vine Street, I saw 5 bicyclists heading eastbound. And it's like, this is great. And we're paving Washington Street now, and Washington will have bike lanes another mile or so plus to the east. And I think the fever is beginning to catch on each month and year as we go on. So those are my comments.
Does anybody have questions for Bill right now? Okay, so we'll take the public comments and then we'll come back for a discussion. All right, so we have first of all Karen Dixon. Would you like to come forward? And please give us your name and address and
My name is Karen Dixon, and I live at 1005 South Kinch in Urbana. And I want to thank you all for listening, and I'm here again. I was here last week. Mm-hmm. First of all, I do have a petition that's been signed by many homes on Kinch. I tried at different times to try to get all of them because they all feel the same way. But unfortunately, there was some that just weren't home, and I could not get. But I do have what I could get here. And also, I was out front of my house about 5 o'clock in the nice spring weather, and I did not see any bicyclists on Kinch. Again, this is very important to us, and because just for so many reasons, and I've lived there for so long, I sit out front, we have our patio furniture, I see a lot. I've seen car accidents. 2 of our cars have been hit sitting in front of our house, right where the bicycle path is going to go. Mm-hmm. The drivers, it's not the matter of changing the speed or anything, because they are the people now that go right through the stop sign there on Lantern Hill and turn. I have seen a couple of accidents there. They just don't care. They are the same people that are going to give us trouble regardless of what the speed limit is or how many bicycle paths are there. I want to talk about the children's safety for the schools. That's what it was supposed to be all about and everything. But yet I also have a letter that was written to Janet Gravelin, and an answer to her email, and it even had stated on here that bicyclists are safer on the let's see, it was this one up here. The League of Illinois Bicyclists, as well as Champaign County Bicycle Corps, have requested this. But again, that's not the citizens that live out there and that have to deal with it. And I have talked to a lot of parents and grandparents. I got out and really talked to people this weekend, and they all feel the same way. And even people that don't live there think that the idea is not good, and they do not like a lot of the bicycle paths that have been in place because we don't even know how to use them. There's lack of like how to drive, and am I going to hit somebody because I don't see them or whatever. But anyhow, and you're saying this is for the kids, but yet most of these parents and grandparents, they say, like, would you let your child, these are just grade school kids, on Prairie and at Thomas Paine. That's a young kid. There's no way I would have ever let my child. I walked my kids 40 years ago to school every day, along with their friends, or took them in a car because it wasn't safe. Now it's much worse. One of the ladies was a teacher that told me that her daughter's friend always was on the sidewalk, rode her bike, but then they put in the path, and a car got real close to her and grabbed her purse and knocked her over. None of these people said they would ever let their ride. Even if you do this, they will not let their kids ride in that street. And there was also an answer to a letter saying that let your child ride on the sidewalk for safety. But then that's supposed to be against the law. That's what we were taught. So there's so many contradictive things as well that I have seen. But anyhow, most of the people said, I would say all of the people that I talked to, every one of them, said they would not let their kid, or who would let their child, actually ride in the street to school. And then with all of the thefts out there, we're getting another thing called burglary, theft of bicycles. And I'm here to tell you, just look at the crime out there. Just look at it. Just look it up. And last year, all around us and friends have been burglarized. So anyhow, please think about the voting again and put off. We want statistics. Okay, fine, you come out there, you sit, you see no bicycles, or one or two once in a great while. And if this doesn't change and you've taken all this away from us and taken our parking, are they going to replace it? Are they going to take it away again? If there's not that many bicyclists, or I've never heard of anybody being hit there. So you have one on Windsor and Florida and over on Washington. Just like me, I safely get over to the bicycle paths, or I can safely get over to the golf course where I like to ride my bike. But I don't need a bicycle path. And the kids do not. The ones I see on the street in the summer are the ones with their parents riding as a family. And they show their way. So, are we going to choose bicycle clubs or other things? And say, use the sidewalk for these young kids where they're much safer. If somebody even hits them on the sidewalk, what's it going to do? It's not going to hurt them. But if they're hit on a road, what's it going to do? We all know that the finality would be
You have
bad.
1 minute, Ms. Dixon.
So I'm here again to please say, please take statistics of it. Come and sit with me. I'll give you tea. I'll give you whatever, and you can sit, and I'd love to visit with you. And watch out front on our road. Because I'm telling you, it's a nice neighborhood to just sit in and neighbor with the neighbors, or to have our company. I have my granddaughter coming again next month. She's staying a week. Where's she going to park her car? I'm not going to let her park over in a place where we can't even watch the car. Or, you know, every time she wants to go to it, walk her clear down the street, or take up somebody else's parking. And across the street even, they have parking there too when they have things. But this is very, you know, she's one grandchild. We have 7, and we'll soon have 9. And I don't mean babies. My daughter's adopting from Haiti 2 children. So they're all of driving age. Thank you very much for listening, and I please ask you to take this to heart as our street has. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next individual, Rick Langlis. Would you like to come forward, please? And give us your name and where you live for the record, please. And you have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm Rick Langlois. I live in 1412 Mayfair Road in Champaign. I am the vice president of Champaign County Bikes and one of the founders. And though I'm a Champaign resident, we work closely with planners in both the city of Urbana and in the city of Champaign. And we welcome and have Urbana residents come and comment on bike plans in the city of Champaign as well. Recently, we've had John Street and State Street. So for the Urbana residents who wonder why a Champaign guy is over here talking, I just want to say that we're working closely with trying to pay attention and evaluate bike plans. The planners do a good job. They have been working on these plans for a long time. And I think that I appreciate very much concerns of the residents in terms of losing parking. In terms of a bike plan being a detriment to the community, I hope that they can be open-minded and anticipate it being actually quite a good asset, both to them individually, anybody who's physically able to bicycle, and to the other people who use and pass through that community on bikes and want to do it more safely. Furthermore, my understanding is from city statistics that they need to slow traffic down, and this is also hopefully going to have a traffic calming effect. I would add that bicycling on the sidewalk is very dangerous by comparison, and statistics would show that and support that, and that I think the proper place is in a street. A lot of cyclists can bicycle like traffic. Others feel much better having a bike lane that's dedicated, and where you're trying to calm traffic and keep people safe, I think the planners probably have the right approach. Any
Okay.
questions for me?
Other questions? Yes, Mayor.
I wanted to ask you about recommendations on the age of children riding in the street.
That's kind of a tough call because it depends on their abilities and traffic awareness, and maturity level. Accompanied by an adult, I think, 4th and 5th grade starts to be about the age that a kid is probably getting to where they're safe to ride in a bicycle facility. On an unimproved street, it's more questionable. It depends a lot on the level of service and the traffic levels, the traffic volumes, and traffic speeds. But it depends a lot. Some kids grow up in bicycling families and are more capable of being out younger, and some kids aren't.
Okay, thank you.
That brings to mind the fact that we have to do more to help educate the kids how to bicycle safely on the street. all over the country. And we're working on that too, in conjunction with Safe Routes to School. We hold a lot of rodeos, and we have training opportunities all summer long, so we're trying. And we also have to educate drivers on how to drive properly around lanes, because they don't know necessarily how to drive next to a bike lane, particularly at intersections where there are left and right turn maneuvers, and conflicts can occur. So we're working on all of those.
I've got a comment. I'm wondering if it would be useful to have a discussion in the neighborhood supported by the Champaign County Bikes to educate people. There seem to be a lot of questions about how bike lanes could be used on the street, and it might be that the residents themselves haven't been biking recently, and that there's confusion about how bike lanes are incorporated into a street scape. So I mean, it might be of use to have an informational
we'd welcome the
workshop
opportunity.
or something.
The city planners obviously are very capable of having that discussion as well.
Yeah.
And I think probably have made attempts to share those plans and kind of, we can do it maybe more from a bicyclist's perspective, and we'd be happy to do that. But the planners are very knowledgeable as well. So,
okay, thank
absolutely.
you. Other comments? Okay. Mike Kukulin, would you like to step forward? Give us your name and your address.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Kilcullen, and I live at 202 North Ray Street in Urbana. And as most of you may know by now, I am a transportation planner with my master's degree from U of I. And I have a strong interest about transportation networks in general and how they can enhance communities. And last week I did speak about this Kent Street plan, not so much in favor or against the particular plan, but only in regards to the confusion of information, perhaps lack maybe of information for the public or the committees. And so first of all, I would love to thank everyone for at least postponing the vote. That's just the main thing was we needed more consideration, and I thank everyone for voting. We have not denied the plan, we have not approved the plan, but it has given more opportunity for everyone to reflect as well as to come up with other ideas. Perhaps that might work better. I think it is very important, as we discovered during the meeting last week and also outside talking with some of the residents, that there was some errors. So one of the maps had missing information. There was confusion on the parts of the residents as well as me as to exactly how much parking was being prohibited. And so I think it's very important that the city has to always give out correct information to get the best plans made. So I just want to encourage that the city always tries to do its best. A notification may not be enough if the information is incomplete or leads to rumors or misunderstandings, things like that. But so I think it is very important also to listen to the affected residents, and we have heard from some of them now. Somehow we did not seem to always hear from them 3 months ago, 2 months ago, or a year ago with the master plan of the bike routes and all that. So I think in spite of some people saying that the council does not listen, I think the council is very good at listening, and you are showing that last week and this week that residents are showing up, and I also appreciate that as a resident of town, that I do believe that you do try to listen. However, we also have to know that the affected residents are not the only ones that this affects. Everyone in the community is also affected by a choice of where any street is at, any sidewalk, any bike route. It's a network, and one segment of one street still affects other people in Urbana as well as Champaign who might have to drive on that, who might have to ride a bike on that, or who may just choose to ride a bike on a nice spring day. So it's not just the 2 blocks, 3 blocks of residents. That is also a community aspect as well to listen to. The residents might have a one step higher importance, or I'm not quite sure how to word that, but it's not just the residents' opinions only. There are other people in the community, and that's part of what living in a community is all about. I think we also have to acknowledge that that this was that the bike plan itself and this particular stretch with Kin Street was actually part of a bigger plan. This has been determined for a couple of years, and I do come out in support of the idea that there will be a bike path of some sort. My main concern last week was that there was not enough information about maybe its particular implementation, but I do think that the residents should be aware that that it's most likely that a bike path should be on there because this has been planned and it is part of a wider network of the entire community, not just for a 3-block section of a street. The question is, how do we accommodate? How do we compromise? How do we maybe phase it in? There might be options as to the implementation of it, but I think that the residents and the community at large should recognize that there probably will be a bike path. And I personally do support the idea of a bike path. I just wasn't sure this month how it would be implemented. So I have reservations about that part of it. But the idea of the bike path itself, I support. I will also say that last week I did talk privately with several of the residents here on the grounds after the meeting, and I gave out business cards. And I will say that not a single person has contacted me at all this week for any participation, for any information, or for my opinions, or for me to help advise them of how to make this better or stop it or whatever. I have not gotten any comments or personal contact from anyone in that area. And to me, I wonder if it's the same thing that the city sees. If no one contacts me or contacts you, how do you know how they feel? Do they care if they don't make the effort to contact me when I give out my cards and I tell them that I'm willing to help them, not the city, but help them, and no one contacts me? As far as Ms. Dixon's several comments, I have enjoyed talking with her. I would love to go have tea on the porch with her. I do have a couple comments as far as these things about car accidents. It's not about the bike lanes at all. Cars that are hitting other cars has already happened. It has nothing to do about your parking, lack of parking, or bike lane installation. To me, it's a red herring. The thing about driver education, this is state of Illinois choosing not to retest written exams every 4 years. This residents choosing not to reread the rules of the road, and admittedly, I have not reread them either, but I don't drive a car. But for those that drive, it's important.
And
People
we're
don't know
running out
how
of
to
time.
act. Okay. People don't know how to act around bike lanes because they are not choosing to be taught. Thank you very much for your time and your listening. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Thank you very much. Now we have Nikki Hiller.
Hi, I'm Nikki Hillier. I live at 3801 Glenbrook Road in Champaign. I work for the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, and I'm kind of here in that capacity. I also sit on the CU Safe Routes to School Steering Committee. We know that obesity is a problem in America, especially for our youth. Obesity rates have more than tripled, in some categories quadrupled for our youth since the 70s. And in a recent report, Illinois tied for 4th for obese youth ages 10 to 17 years old. And we know that there's a lot of reasons for this, but especially it's changes that have happened in our environment. We live in an environment that promotes unhealthy eating and discourages active living, an environment that really rewards unhealthy behavior, and it makes the unhealthy choice really the easy choice, the most convenient choice. And there's a lot of examples of ways that we've done this. Most of them are around portion control and supersizing and free refills and labor-saving devices, limiting active transportation. We've really convenienced physical activity out of our lives by making it really easy to drive to places that we could walk, or making walking and biking to places inconvenient or unsafe. We didn't become, have these high rates of obesity overnight. This was something that happened over the course of 40 years. Small changes that we made to our environment that made us less active and made us make unhealthy choices about food. So we can't turn it around overnight. But one of the quickest ways to really change things is to make simple changes to our environment so that we're making the healthy choice, the easy choice, the most convenient choice, the safest choice, the best choice. And we can do this by making those kinds of changes to our environment, like a lot of the things that Urbana is already doing around food and transportation, and like Bill was talking about, seeing people out biking and walking on a nice day. That's because of the infrastructure that Urbana has built to support that active living for your community. Creating bike lanes to encourage students to safely bike to school is a great, really simple, inexpensive way to change the environment to support healthy behaviors and an active community. And it's sustainable. It's not, just 1 year we're going to be encouraging students to bike to school. Having that bike lane there is going to encourage students to bike to school for years and years, and the rest of the community as well. And we're saying to our kids that health is a priority for Urbana, and we're changing our community to prove it. Biking to school is really great for kids, so let's show them that we support it.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Okay, thank you
Thanks.
very kindly.
Thank you.
All right, we have one more person in the audience who'd like to speak at this time. Cynthia Hoyle, can you come forward, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Cynthia Hoyle, and I thank you for letting me come and speak here tonight. I am speaking tonight to you as chair of CU Safe Routes to School Project, but I'm also a resident of Urbana. I live at 2207 South Cottage Grove. I am also chair of CU Safe Routes to School Project. Most of you know that already. I am also a league certified cycling instructor, and I'm certified through the League of American Bicyclists. I do education for children in the community with CU Safe Routes to School. We educate hundreds of children every year through our bike rodeos and classes. So I instruct children on bicycle safety, and I hear a lot of confusion and misinformation about what's safe for children in bicycling. I would be happy to provide information to anyone who's interested in that. But I also wanted to talk to you about the implementation of Urbana Safe Routes to School program grants, because the city got one, excuse me, and we did as well, and those two grants are tied together. The U.S. Department of Transportation has said that Safe Routes to School infrastructure creates lasting benefits in a community by increasing safety and giving people choices in active transportation so that people can walk or bike to school. The studies show that children who walk and bicycle to school are more physically active. They have lower rates of obesity. They're more likely to meet physical activity guidelines than children who are bused or driven to school. And additional benefits that the Safe Routes to School program has, that the Centers for Disease Control has identified, are that there's an increased likelihood that children and adults will choose to walk and bike for short distances if the infrastructure is there. It actually improves neighborhood safety because people are out and about and on the streets. And this has been shown to be the case in big urban areas like Chicago. Fewer cars traveling in the neighborhood and slowing the speed of the vehicles improves safety for everybody. And there's also a reduction in congestion that improves safety around schools when people can get their children to school without having to drive them. The other thing that we're finding from the research is that children who walk and bike to school have better academic performance because they've been active, and their brains work better when they've been active. CU Safe Routes to School Project was awarded a $76,000 grant, and the goal of our grant was to ensure that students can use active transportation modes such as walking and biking to get safely to school. We are coordinating implementation of our grant with the City of Urbana and the Urbana School District, and we're particularly working with Urbana middle school students, and we have a program that we're implementing to measure whether we increase rates of bicycling to or from school with our incentive program and the implementation of the bike infrastructure leading to the middle school. So what we are going to be doing is installing a radio frequency tag program that's called Voltage, and I have some brochures here if you would like to see them. Students sign up for the program. Their parents have to sign permission forms, of course, and they receive a tag that they use when they come to school. It looks like this. And there's a solar-powered counter that is going to be located on the southeast corner of the school by the bike parking, and it will automatically count their trips to school. And they receive incentives in varying increments based on number of trips to school, and the more trips you have, the better your incentives are. And I also thought I would say on a personal note that my own 2 children are an example of how letting children walk and bike to school creates lifelong habits. Both of my children bicycled to Urbana Middle School and Urbana High School. And my daughter is now in graduate school at the University of Illinois. She lives in Southeast Urbana as well, and she bicycles as her primary mode of transportation. Some of you have heard me tell this story. My mother offered to buy her a car when she graduated from high school, and my daughter told her she didn't want one, that she would prefer to have a new bike.
You have 1 minute, Ms. Hoyle.
Thank you. And she continues to use her bike. My son is a student at Parkland. He lives at home with us, and he bicycles back and forth to Parkland. We've offered to provide him with other modes of transportation, and he prefers not to. So the best thing for our children in this community is for us to support them in establishing lifelong habits that lead to active lifestyles and healthy living habits. And if we enable our children to be able to walk and bike to school safely, which bike lanes on Kent Street would enable, then we will help them create a lifelong habit. Thank you. I can answer any questions.
Are there questions? Yes, first, Brandon Marsox.
Yeah, I know you have like the master amount of research on all this stuff, and your back page has a ton of studies and things. So I wanted to ask you the same question that the mayor had put to Rick about
Yes.
age appropriateness. Certainly,
Yes.
officially, this federal program is for elementary and middle school age
Mhm.
children. We know it'll also benefit high school students and just plain old adults in the community, but tell us what's your feeling and what does the research and the best practices show about what ages parents should consider having a kid on the sidewalk versus using something like a protected bike lane on a street?
When I do education with parents, I talk to them about this issue a lot. And riding on the sidewalk is where little children usually are going to be riding. They lack the capability to estimate speed and distance. This is also the reason why we need sidewalks and crossing guards, because they have trouble estimating the speed and distance, and so they will dart out in front of vehicles to cross the street, for example. By about 4th grade and 5th grade, they have begun to develop that capability, and the programs in other places where they educate all of the children in this public school system on bicycle safety, and they do on-bike skills development, they do that starting in 4th grade. So it really does depend on the child. The parents have to make that determination. I let my children bicycle around when they were in 4th and 5th grade. I got pushback from other parents about it. And my son always wanted to bicycle to Meadowbrook Park by himself. This was before we put our lovely crosswalk in, and so it was a anxious thing for a mother to do, to let her 4th and 5th grader go bicycle to Meadowbrook. But I asked him how he chose to cross the street there, and he told me that he waited until there were no cars visible. Well, that seemed reasonable to me, and he has never been hit by a car. He did once crash when he ran over I think it was the hose from a hydrant that was being drained. I think he wasn't paying any attention. So, those are the kinds of wrecks we've had. He's never had a crash with a vehicle. So the answer to your question is around 4th and 5th grade, children can bicycle on their own if they have been given proper instruction. And parents really have to make the final decision based on the child, their capabilities, and their maturity level. Some children might have the capability, but they're daredevils, and you worry about them not paying any attention to the rules. So it really does depend on the parent's determination.
Yes, Charlie, do you have a question?
Cynthia, you mentioned economic advantages of bicycling. What about property values and that sort of thing? I know I've seen some stuff on business districts, but what about in residential areas?
Well, the National Association of Realtors has become very enthusiastic about bicycle infrastructure because consistently private residences that are located next to bicycle infrastructure, not bike routes, but bike paths, bike lanes, etc., have greatly enhanced value, and it does depend on whether you have a system or not. I took a tour in Madison, Wisconsin, and as you know, they have quite a system up there, and their first path was a rail to trail, and the residents along there violently opposed it, and they did get it in, and now when those houses are advertised for sale on our tour, all of the for sale signs were on the bike path, and the listings, when I looked in the newspaper, featured that they were on the bike path. And even the house renovations that were being done, like the guy who did the roof or whatever, he put his sign on the bike path. So it clearly is a benefit, and I've been in other communities as well with very expensive properties that are along these routes, and clearly people like living there. So I think in most cases that I have heard of, it has enhanced residential property values. And if people are going to come to rob your house, they are not going to do it on a bicycle. They would come in their car, because it would be very hard to haul away a plasma TV on your bicycle, but it would fit nicely in the trunk of your car. So that's a fear that people have, that after one of these things has gone in, they find that that's not the case, that in fact probably having extra people and eyes on the street reduces crime rates.
All right. Any other questions for Cynthia? Thanks very much.
Thanks again.
All right. There. I guess we have council discussion. Does anybody want to begin discussing the Kinch bike? It's really, we're discussing not the bike lanes, but we're discussing removal of parking. Yes, Eric.
Well, I think we are discussing removal of parking and bike lane striping, because they both go together. They're both part of this. But as far as the removal of parking, what we're doing for most of the street, what is proposed to be done for most of the street, is to remove half the parking. And none of the surveys of parking that have been done, no snapshots, have shown that anywhere near that half the parking capacity on that street is used. So it does not seem to me that the removal of parking, except for those couple of blocks where the street is narrow and parking is going to have to be removed on both sides, so that will necessitate somebody parking perhaps a block or two farther away than they would otherwise. But for most of the street, there should be no effect on parking. As far as adding the bike lanes, I think adding bicycle lanes always improves bicycling safety. I've been bicycling in this town off and on for over 40 years. The major place that I park where I bicycle where it didn't used to be bicycle lanes and now there are, is on Goodwin Avenue through the campus. And that has been such a wonderful change. I not only feel safe, but I'm sure that I and other cyclists, the combination of the bicycle lanes and the traffic calming, other traffic calming by pedestrian walkways across Goodwin, have really improved the safety. In the course of time that I've been here, I have personally seen 3 cyclists on campus hit by motor vehicles. Happened right in front of my eyes. That's 3 times more than anybody should want to see that. It's awful. And one of those was on Goodwin, where at that time there wasn't a striped bike lane, and now there is. So I have tried to listen. I have listened as carefully as I could to the various discussions, and I know that people's perceptions are important, but I do believe that it is a very good idea to add these bike lanes, to restrict the parking on as is necessary to add the bike lanes. I don't think anybody's going to have to walk more. For most of the place, nobody's going to have to walk more than across the street. And for on a couple of the blocks where both sides are going to be removed, parking is going to be removed. People may have to go a block or two. But I think in the balance of things, I'm inclined now, and I'm ready now to support the plan we have in front of us.
All right. Other comments at this point? Yes, Brandon Bowersox Johnson.
I had a couple quick questions for Bill. One is about the stop sign thing. I know the safety concerns I heard loud and clear, and I do believe they're legitimate, about people speeding on this corridor and flying around the corner when they come off of Florida and onto Kinch. So I do think the consideration about a stop sign at Florida and Kinch and the other possible locations is really important, and that we should look at stop signs there. So I guess I just wanted sort of a status update on how that goes, or does that come to the Traffic Commission, and will there be notice of that? And if it does happen this summer, could all of this be done by the end of the summer, so that this new corridor might feature stop signs as well that would be an additional calming effect?
With respect to the stop sign study, in speaking with staff, I think 2 to 3 months from now at the Traffic Commission meeting, we would have that on an agenda item for discussion, and we would do our usual notification of the impacted block. And to answer your question, if a stop sign, always stop, is recommended at any of those 2 locations that we're to look at Michigan or at Florida, very easily that could be coordinated with the work for the striping, if in fact that's what council votes to decide.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
One other piece of the question was about the street lighting. It sounded like it may be that portions of this corridor, I do hear the safety concern as well, that some people felt, for the people on the couple blocks where they couldn't park right across from their house, felt that parking right around the corner would be a safety concern because there's no street lights. So it sounded like parts of these areas were in eligible tracts for CDBG dollars that over a few years of allocations could contribute. So I guess, could you describe what the process is like for us being able to tell the neighbors the sort of the ballpark cost of lighting, even if it's just lighting at the intersections, and how the neighbors go about considering that, and sort of what the first step is? I know maybe the first step was just a neighbor requesting this idea, but if you could describe how that could be initiated.
The street lighting master plan showed a desire to someday light all the intersection lighting at city expense where they're unlit areas. If we're lighting just the intersections, then it would be not a direct cost to adjacent property owners. If we're to continuously light the streets, then there would be participation by adjacent property owners. Those areas that would be covered by block grant money is a possibility to help offset those costs. Again, it's at least 2 to 3 years away to consider that. With respect to what the cost would be, we would have to figure that out. I don't have that information tonight. I can tell you that it's would probably be an assessment that would be spread over 10 years, that the cost would be on the order of probably $100 or $200, I don't know, per year. I mean, I imagine it'd be the most. So to give you an idea, I can also say that over the last 20 years, when we ask property owners if they're willing to contribute money to continuously light their block, the answer historically has been 0 over the last 20 years. Zero meaning not interested. That some that are very interested in seeing street lighting, their hands up, I'll pay that X dollars per year for 10 years, but a clear majority, well over 50%, say, no way, I like it the way it is. I don't need street lights, I'm not going to pay for it. Okay. That's been the sampling, that's been my experience to date.
Okay.
Continue.
And I'll just kind of tell you where I'm at this point. I think, like Eric, I have done my best to listen to all the perspectives here, and unfortunately this isn't one of those easy situations. Unfortunately, here we have to make a decision between children's safety and between convenience of parking and try to make the best decision. And I know there were concerned neighbors on Washington, even one neighbor who didn't have a driveway at all on Washington when we did this. And now that this has been installed on Washington, for example, I hear overwhelming positive things. The same with other streets too. I think even with the Lincoln Avenue conversion, at first there was a lot of worry and we weren't sure we were doing the right thing or not. But after it was in and we got to road test it, we hear very positive things about the change on Lincoln. So I guess I feel like this is just paint. We can try this, that given the choice between kids' safety and encouraging kids to ride to school versus the parking convenience, I would come out on the choice of safety and trying it with paint. And if somehow we all determine in 2 years that this was the worst possible thing to do, then it's a change of paint to change it back. I do think the stop signs and the street lights are things that I'm glad the stop signs we can move ahead with and easily consider, and that the street lights is definitely something that neighbors should think about and express their interests. If lighting at the intersections or continuously along the street is important for safety, then I want to hear more about that from neighbors. But I think all the questions I had were answered, and like Eric, I'm comfortable moving ahead. I wish this were a simple, easy decision, and I wish we never had to impact anyone's parking, because I know to the folks who live there, just like on Washington, especially at the time of the change, it's a real headache to change your parking patterns and habits. But I think on balance that given that there's no other alternative for bike lanes nearby, and given the choice of safety and parking, I would side now with safety.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Other comments? Charlie.
I confirm with staff that Kinch from Vermont to Washington would be eligible for CDBG funding for lighting. If I could just wave the magic wand, I would move to add stop signs at Kinch in Florida and at Michigan and Kinch to help calm traffic. I'm willing to wait, but my gut says that we need to get that done as part of this project by the end of the summer. So with that caveat, I'm ready to move forward too.
All right. Yes, Robert Lewis.
Well, I think that we have to err on the side of safety as it relates to the children. And number one, if we have a calming problem on this street, and we also have a lighting problem on this street, I would like to see that be the priority first before we consider the lane changes on this street. Because if you can't address the safety up front, then it becomes problematic for the children. So I think we're at an impasse here on this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Diane.
I have a question for Bill. What is our deadline for making a decision on this?
What is the deadline for making a decision on this? Well, we're out for bids, and I did speak with IDOT and FHWA, and if the answer is to not put in bike lanes, we don't jeopardize the grant, so the balance of the Safe Route to School grant is still intact. We would have to amend the agreement, but we would just deduct, this would not be eligible to do that. So to answer your question, we probably have a month to make a decision if you need that amount of time or what have you. But at some point, once we award the contract, we would need to make sure the contractor knows what his scope of work is. So that's easily 30 days or so.
Okay.
All right.
Dennis, I have
Okay, Diane.
one other comment.
Go ahead.
This is a tough one, and I'm a very strong supporter of healthy eating and active living. But I also think it's important to take the neighborhood context into account on this one. And this is not Race Street, which is a highly successful bike lane. This is East Urbana, and there's a real fear, and it's not unfounded, about safety. And not safety in terms of just bicycling, but safety in terms of walking 2 extra blocks to get to your car if it's parked on a dark side street. And it's based in reality for that particular neighborhood. And so that's what makes this one very, very difficult for me anyway. The other question is, or the other concern I'm hearing a lot from people over the past week is there's a real confusion among the public about how drivers are supposed to behave with these bike lanes. And I think we've kind of fallen behind in our education efforts for teaching drivers how to interact with the bike lanes. And Philo Road comes up a lot because that's a very visible bike lane. And people still do not understand what to do and when to get over into the right lane. And I hope that we can have or renew our educational efforts so that somehow we can help people understand how to use these bike lanes. I know we have this wonderful video out there and we made a real push at the beginning, but there's a lot of people who are just terribly afraid that they're going to hit a bicyclist. Their worst fear is that that there's going to be a bad interaction between them and a bicyclist, and we have to make sure we keep up our education efforts. And I don't know exactly how to do that, but I hope we have some experts who can help with that. So I'm very supportive of that we're doing the speed study and the stop sign study, and I hope we can get streetlights there. But I don't know. I just need a couple more weeks to think about this. So I would move to keep this in committee for 2 more weeks until the next.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, Robert Lewis seconds it. Is there a discussion about that motion then?
Well,
Eric.
I guess I doubt that we're going to come out in a different place, but so I will probably oppose that motion, but I will not oppose it to the death.
Okay. Okay, Brandon Barsox.
2 weeks, I think, would put it, if it came back to council, it would come back May 6th. That would be the Monday that the new council is sworn in. So I would ask the clerk whether this would appear on this council's agenda, or would the subsequent city council vote on it on May 6th?
It would appear on your agenda first. You would have to complete your business that's being held over before the new council takes its seat.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I don't feel like personally 2 weeks will, I feel like I've had a lot of conversations and gotten a lot of information. I don't know that the 2 weeks would specifically help me, but if we're going to make a decision, I'd like to make it.
Okay, Charlie, are you going to make one?
Well, no, I was going to say that we can ask the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission to look at how to beef up education efforts. You know, it might be just the timing of the video, getting it front and center on the city's website, and having it cycle through on a more regular basis, so that it is front and center. Things like that.
Bike to Work Month in May might be a great time to promote.
We'll be doing a big push on that starting very shortly.
Mayor.
Just to get my 2 cents worth in, it seems like maybe the drivers' testing should have something, and the training should have something about bicyclists. If we're going to be promoting bicyclists, drivers need to have education, and that should be in the state certification for drivers.
An excellent comment. There's one more thing. I just wanted to read an email that I received from Mrs. Gritton, who lives on the street. She just mentioned about 3 different things, and I'm just going to read a very short email. This is part of the public input. To whom it may concern, I am totally against the bike path taking parking from Kinch Street. The need for such addition and the real for anyone is questionable. I have seen 1 bicycle on the street this year. Please do not take our ability to park in front of our homes from us to allow infrequent use of the bike path. I highly doubt that any bikers might even come through the would-be actual residents of our street, and I doubt that anyone would enjoy giving up our personal space for an occasional stranger's use. Please take a look at the trash around Stone Creek roads. There is a definite problem with trash that has been left. It is unsightly. I do not like the trash that is on Kinch Street. Who will be responsible for picking up debris? I have also seen people using the roads when there are bike paths available. This occurs on Stone Creek as well as on Windsor Road, and they have a dedicated path there. Why build a bike path if people are going to use the street? Consider the ones who are personally impacted by your decision and put yourself in our place. Thank you, A. Gritton. I forgot to put that into public comment. Well, all right. I guess the question is whether we're going to delay this and put this on the agenda for the City Council, committee of the whole meeting in 2 weeks. Any other discussion? I guess I'll take a vote on this. Okay, those in favor of the motion to postpone for 2 weeks indicate by saying aye.
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 Okay, there's 2. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, looks like the decision to postpone has been defeated. So does anybody want to make a comment or a motion at this point?
So I move adoption of the ordinance as submitted to us.
Would it be a motion to send it to council?
I'm sorry, I move to send the ordinance to council with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Is there a second to that? Okay. Charlie Smythe. Discussion on this motion or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, this still gives us a week, so I feel like for anyone out there listening who feels like they haven't had their voices heard or contacted their council member, they should definitely do so. I have to say I've learned a lot through hearing from people about especially the safety concerns, the people, speeding around corners and things, and I hope that we can take a comprehensive view of making this corridor safer.
Okay. All right, those in favor?
I have a
Oh,
comment.
we have one, I'm sorry.
Is it possible
Please
to
say.
request, if this passes, request I guess an evaluation of the pre and post usage of this particular stretch? It is only paint that we're putting on the street here, but when will this particular stretch be evaluated as far as usage goes?
That can be part of the motion.
The answer to your question, we're trying to do that with all our bike lane facilities in town, so the answer is yes. We would want to evaluate and take counts and know what that is, and in fact, that's embedded in the bike plan, master plan update, which is a 12-month update, but there's a component to that.
So would it be 12 months then after this goes in?
The update would be done in 12 months, like a year from now is when it would be completed.
So of the Kinch Street in specific?
Well, let me clarify now. I can't tell you today when the bike lanes will be installed, okay? So on Kinch Street specific, we might have to do a separate count, if you will, X months after it's installed. But for the rest of the facilities that are out there now, that will be part of the bike master plan update, which Kuwait staff will be performing for us. And it's a 12-month endeavor, which includes public information meetings, et cetera, and a final presentation to you all.
So but for the residents who want to know, then there will be a follow-up at some 12 to 18 months after they're installed?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And Robert Lewis.
Would that follow-up include statistical data on travel? Bikes traveled on these routes?
Yes, it will count the number of bicyclists on the various bicycle facilities in the community. I can't tell you if it's a 24-hour count or a 1 week or what have you, but we will have some count information.
Has a protocol been established for what it means if it's, for example, if a particular road or bike path became not usable? For example, it didn't warrant enough traffic to be there. What would happen?
I think we will all learn that as part of the study.
Okay, hopefully, yes. All right, thanks.
Okay. All right, other discussion? All right, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, we have one vote against. All right, so that goes to council with recommendation of approval. Okay, thank you. That was a very good and concise review of this issue, I think, and I hope that it comes out to be a positive result. And of course, we'll be making the final vote next week.
This is going to be approved, not sealed.
We're not taking public input at this point on this topic. This topic is, we're moving along.
One other thing I want to say.
You could do next week, yes. Okay. All right. And in this pause here, I'd like to say that I did get one more public input card from a person in the audience, Reverend Melinda Carr, on behalf of the Ministerial Alliance of Champaign-Urbana and vicinity. Wished to comment that she continues supporting the Dr. Ellis subdivision residents and their concerns about the sewer issue being resolved by the City Council. All right. Now we're going to go to Resolution 2013-04-014R, a resolution for the improvement by municipality under the Illinois Highway Code, Race Street. Robert, Bill, are you going to speak on this?
I will. What's before you tonight is a motor fuel tax resolution using state motor fuel tax money to pay for the reconstruction of Race Street between Michigan and Washington Street, just south of Washington Street. And let me just talk a little bit about what the project entails. First of all, we have met with the school district. We have met with property owners on the west side of Race Street. And the project essentially is going to be two lanes, one northbound, one southbound, that will be 11 feet wide. Currently, they're 10 feet wide. There will also be bus pullouts for boarding, lighting students at the high school for the MTD buses. Currently, when they are in that process, it literally can and does stop traffic, particularly northbound traffic, when there's southbound traffic. So the buses, the students will have a safe place on the east side of the street in front of the high school to load. The sidewalks are going to be reconstructed. They'll be 6 foot wide. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic in that area, particularly where there's a sidewalk behind the curb on the west side. That'll be a wider sidewalk. We will not be encroaching any further into the front yards of those property owners on the west side. However, through the sidewalk widths, with the lane widths, with the parking on street, with the bus turnouts, we will be encroaching further on the school district side of the property. We have spoken with school district officials. They will be taking to their board a request by us to grant us an easement so that we can install street lighting. We're going to have to relocate the street lights on the east side of Race Street. There will be some trees that will have to be removed with this improvement. They're not very large trees, but there's still trees that will need to be removed on the east side. That is an impact to this work. But at the end of the day, we'll have a new pavement. We'll have good, safe travel with wide lanes. This is a bike share the road location, so we continue and augment the bicycle travel north and southbound in this location. We'll have a safer bus loading situation, and we'll also have an enhanced mid-block pedestrian crossing from the high school to the park, which is just south of Iowa, north of Indiana Street. So all in all, I think this will be a definite improvement to the location, and we're seeking approval. Also, what I passed out this evening, apologize for not being part of the packet, is, and this would be an ordinance for, if you approve it, of course, next council meeting, is revising the budget amendment ordinance, which is the motor fuel tax money is $850,000, which we need to do a budget amendment ordinance, since technically this money is not in this current fiscal year's budget.
Okay. Comments or questions? Charlie Smythe.
I think the neighborhood has been anxiously awaiting this project. It's in pretty bad shape. My only question for Bill, I take it this is going to happen basically during the summer when school is,
Yeah, I didn't mention that. When school's out, which would be the end of May or so, is when the contractor would start, and we'd want to be completing the project by August 15th, 20th, in that time frame. So there'll be a tight timetable, but it's a doable timetable. But yes, the work would occur this summer. The road will be closed. The road will be closed.
Okay. Okay. So it'll be basically people have to route around it. Will it be closed to Iowa, or will Iowa be available?
It will be closed Michigan to just south of Washington.
South of Washington. Okay. Okay. Well. Okay. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to send this to council with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, Charlie Smythe.
Second.
And Eric Jacobson. Okay, Mayor first.
I just had a question. Is it going to be closed to pedestrians too? Or just traffic in the street?
I think for the most part, the east or west side would probably be available. I don't think we're going to totally close it to pedestrians, but while the sidewalk's being replaced, obviously one side will be impassable.
Okay.
But that sort of coordination detail we would work out with the contractor.
Thanks.
And Brandon Varsox.
Just to clarify the motion, I wanted to make sure we'd send the resolution, but that also when it appears on the agenda, the ordinance would come with it or whatever. For the budget ordinance part would also appear
Right,
next
you can't
week.
act on that tonight, but I just want to let you know that that
Yeah.
will be coming next Monday night.
Great.
Okay. It sounds like a really great thing that there's going to be a bus pullouts. I think that's going to help alleviate traffic problems there too.
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? Those in favor indicate by please saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? That's none. So that forwards to council with our approval. Number 7 on the agenda. Ordinance number 2013-04-027, an ordinance establishing a legacy tree program. And we have our arborist, Mike Brunk, and it's not Anita, it's Aditi.
That's right.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mike and I are here today to bring back to you the Legacy Tree program that we presented 3 options of at the end of January 2013. We were asked to look into the program and come up with an advisory, follow up on the advisory public input option without a mitigation fee associated with the removal of a designated tree. I have a very short presentation here just covering the main points that were in the memo, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. One of the questions that was raised during the last month was if you could explain a little bit more about the public street tree inventory process and what notable trees might be in that street tree inventory. And Mike has some examples.
So what are notable trees? In our inventory, we wanted to point out to the citizens of Urbana some of the interesting trees in our community, whether they're on public property or private property. And some of these notable trees that we think people may want to go look at, I have some examples here that some may become legacy trees, but some may not. They're not necessarily potential legacy trees. For example, in the upper left-hand corner, we have the Lincoln Heritage Tree. It's just a little 2-inch tree. We just planted it, but it has a lot of historic information with it, and we have a plaque. And we think people would be interested to come and see that tree. So that will be on one of our tree trails, our notable tree trail, for people to come and visit that tree and read the plaque. The next tree to the right, at the center top, odd-looking tree, is a grafted dogwood that was grafted by Professor McDaniel. This tree is south of Nevada on Busey Avenue on the east side, just about it's right there on that corner lot. And it's one kind of a dogwood grafted on top of another kind of a dogwood. Again, it's a smaller tree, probably would never become a legacy tree, but it's very interesting. And it's the kind of thing that we want to point out to our citizens and something they may want to come see. In fact, we have 3 of these around town. We also have a grafted magnolia that clearly has a branch on it that is totally different than what the rest of the tree looks like. So those things are interesting for people to see. Now the top right tree is a very old black maple. And we don't have very many black maples in our community. In fact, we think this was a tree that was probably planted by some of the early people, settlers possibly, in that particular area of town. But it's over 100 years old, and we wanted to put trees similar that have some history behind them in our inventory as notable trees as well. Now that one may become a legacy tree. That fits some of the standards that we're looking for in the legacy tree program. The bottom left is a yew, and we certainly thought people might want to know what their overgrown yew could turn into in, say, 100+ years. Because that's about how old this yew is, and it's a shrub more than it is a tree, but it's very interesting, and I don't know if anybody has seen it. It's right out on the corner here in the sun. It's a beautiful specimen of a giant yew that we've limbed up and basically made a multi-stem tree out of. The last one, as an example of what might be a notable tree, is a very interesting tree. I think it's at 302 or around the 300 block of West Pennsylvania Avenue on the north side, and this was a tree that was struck by lightning. Actually, the tree south of it across the street was damaged by lightning, and we think the lightning arced over and hit this tree, and it left a flame pattern on the tree. It's the first time I've ever seen something like that. It probably won't last but a couple years, but it's a sycamore tree, and it has a perfect flame pattern of the lightning strike on that tree, and it's very beautiful to see and interesting. Again, it's a sycamore tree of a common size. It probably won't become a legacy tree, but yet it's notable and interesting and something that people may want to see. So some examples of what we are titling notable trees in our inventory.
And all of these are street trees or trees on public property, city-owned property. We were also asked to look into and gain some public input on the program that we were proposing, and we've done that over the last couple of months. We made a presentation to the developers at the Developers Roundtable Luncheon, also had an online survey available over the last 2 months. There was a News Gazette article on this program, an article on the city's website. We sent out detailed emails to neighborhood associations, and we also displayed posters and flyers at some businesses. All in all, feedback has been really supportive. People are very interested in this program. We had 11 responses to our online survey. We also had a couple of residents email and call me and ask for information on the program and said that they may have trees that could qualify. One respondent to the survey did not think this was appropriate use of city resources, but other than that, it's been fairly supportive. And we've tried to take into account all the comments we've received through our online survey in sort of making this an easy program for people to participate in and not very expensive as well. I'll quickly go through the program process. The first stage is nomination of a tree. Any resident could nominate any tree in the city using a nomination form that would be available online and in print. The city arborist would then contact the property owner for their consent. If it's on city-owned property, the Public Works Director would be contacted, and consent would be acquired in writing. This is also the time when the city arborist will inform the property owner of the full details of the program, the process for designation, for potential delisting the tree at a future time, etc. The tree would then be assessed using a number of criteria, including the location, health and condition, risk, and various standards. And those legacy standards include things like age, location, rarity, ecological value, historical event, etc. The city arborist would use the criteria of the tree assessment to make a recommendation of whether the tree should become a designated legacy tree to the tree commission. Tree commissioners may go out and assess the tree on their own, and the tree would then be designated by a majority vote of the tree commission. All of this is voluntary. It all hinges on the consent of a property owner. We are, however, hoping that residents will be interested. Trees really add a lot of character and benefits to Urbana, including making it more bikeable and walkable. So to encourage people to participate, we are offering a couple of incentives, including mulch from the Landscape Recycling Center up to 5 cubic yards, tree care advice at the time of assessment, so how they should prune it and how they can take better care of it. In cases where it's a development that requires parking, we can look into administratively reducing the amount of parking under the drip line of the tree, which is beneficial for the tree as well, not to be parking on its roots. And also public recognition that they may have a 150-year-old tree on their side or something really notable happened on that side. And that would be through an online map and a marker at the tree's location. And trails, creating walkable routes. In fact, the company that's doing the public tree inventory has a map they're developing, which is in sort of a testing phase right now, which would then sort of have this information on there and sort of glow as you walk closer to that tree, so you kind of know it's coming up. So it may be behind somebody's house, but you'll know you're in the vicinity and you can sort of keep an eye out. If in the future a resident or a property owner would like to either remove the tree because it's dying or diseased or unhealthy, they can do that. They can apply for a tree removal permit, which would be sort of issued at no cost and within a 7-day period. So there's no hassle involved for a resident in that regard. If it's not clear that the tree is unhealthy, a certified arborist can give that recommendation. And I believe the practice is that kind of recommendation does not cost a resident anything. So it's kind of advice that an arborist would give. And if a tree needs to be removed for any other reason, we are suggesting a 45-day delay to issuing the tree removal permit. And during this time, the city arborist will post a sign near the tree indicating that this tree is scheduled or proposed to be removed. And if the community would like to come and speak out or share their thoughts about the tree at the next tree commission meeting, they're welcome to do so. All input would be advisory. The city arborist would convey these comments to the property owner. A friend pointed out it also might be a good place for people to sort of mourn the death of a tree if that happens, so the neighborhood can come together on something like that. We are suggesting a couple of ways to raise money for this program, a nomination donation. We have it on the nomination form, but it could be of any amount. A fundraising campaign, maybe create a calendar for the designated trees, or also residents can pay for their own more elaborate plaques or markers, and that could be another income stream, and also arbor grants that are available. We decided that limiting 12 trees, 12 designations per calendar year is a manageable amount in terms of time, resources, as well as financial implications of installing plaques and markers and sort of updating publications. The web map and mobile application would be a part of the current program and software and staff capabilities. Commitment in terms of staff time would be about 6 to 14 hours per tree, all the paperwork associated with making sure we're doing it correctly, and that depends on whether it's a city-owned tree or a private tree, and that sort of can shift between that 6 and 14 hours. We are looking at markers which are about 4 inches in diameter, about 6 inches from the ground, so they're not visually sort of, they're not contributing to sign pollution, but really sort of just indicating that here's a tree that has a unique number of code which can be referenced on a map, and has sort of a City of Urbana sign on it, so it sort of stands out. And that costs about $120 per marker if you buy them in a bulk sort of order. The retail value of 5 cubic yards mulch is about $150. That is what we are offering as a one-time incentive to a property owner of a potential tree. And design and marketing of publications for fundraising at the start can be done in-house, and then depending on how the program takes off, we can look into getting sort of making it more formal. So yeah, we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, let's open it up for questions. Yes, Diane Marlin.
I have some questions. First of all, on page 8 of the ordinance, Section 4 refers to trees that can be nominated, and it says either on city-owned or privately owned property. And I wondered about, what about public property that is not in the city's jurisdiction, like the park district or school districts or even U of I? Is that, can trees on those properties be nominated?
Yes, Mike, would you?
I have posed the question to the University of Illinois. They are interested in looking at some of their trees, and they're open to designating trees in Urbana on U of I property as legacy trees. We're still in discussion on how exactly we would do that, but they're open and willing to allow us to put those trees in our inventory. I haven't heard back from them on how many trees they want to inventory. But if we have some in mind that we'd want to put in our inventory or designate legacy trees, they're open to that. The Park District, I have not discussed in detail the idea of including them, although they're joining in with us on the inventory. So their trees are being inventoried along with ours, and that was a cost saver for both the Park District and the city. I don't see it being a problem if we wanted to join forces with the Park District and have legacy trees on park property.
Okay.
So I think they're both doable.
Okay. And then does the designation of legacy tree transfer when the property is sold, and how does that work?
We looked through a couple of options for that, and we finally came upon a solution, which was that every year we would send out a map of the legacy trees in the city to the property owner as well as the residents on those properties, so they would be aware of their designated status. That is the way we would sort of inform them of the program. If there is a new owner, we can get in touch with them and let them know that there is such a program in a tree, and these are the sort of best tree care recommendations we might have for them. We did explore the option of recording it with the county recorder, but that is likely to be more burdensome for future owners if they change property hands, and there's no guarantee of that information actually reaching them if they change hands anyway. So
it's not something that has to be included with the sale of a
No,
property. Okay.
no.
And then are you going to, I know there's a way to put a dollar value on trees. Is it the iTree program?
Mhm.
Is that dollar value going to be included in the nomination form so that owners are aware of the value of the tree?
We can certainly include it in the information we provide them after a tree is nominated. That is something we can, because anyone can nominate a tree, so unless they were aware of the program and looked it up, so it would be something we can share with them in terms of the value of the tree.
I think it would make an impression on
Yes.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then secondly, how much will the program, as you describe it here, cost the city?
In terms of the plaques themselves, that's going to be about $150 per plaque, so 12, and then some amount of staff time. But in terms of the soft cost, we think that we can absorb it in current sort of.
So it won't require additional staff or a budget change, or I mean, it would be absorbed within your current.
The
Arbor division
$120 per tree is something we don't have a budget dollar for. So we would look to raise those funds. That would be new money that we would need to put, what they are is survey markers in front of the tree. We wanted to do those for all legacy trees and then try to raise money for larger, more plaque-like recognition. So if there was somebody that wanted to donate funds, sufficient funds for more of a historic plaque or more informative plaque, that we would go that route. But for minimally, we wanted to put a survey marker there with our legacy tree logo, the city logo, and a number. And that was it was about $120 per marker if we bought, what was it, 24 markers.
And so it would be about 12 of those per year, so that would be about $2,500 for the plaques. That would be the sort of infrastructure material cost.
Okay.
And we haven't raised the funds for that yet.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? Yes, Eric.
So I've read this over and over again, and I mostly I love this, but I remain uncomfortable with the process for a property owner removing a legacy tree on his or her property. And I realize that this has been now, there's no, mitigation fee for this, but there is something that, and maybe other people have a totally different reaction to this, and maybe this amendment will fail for a lack of a second, I don't know. But it just looks to me like a kind of a public shaming of somebody who wants to take a legacy tree down on his or her property. There are any number of reasons why a person might wish to remove a really big tree, even if it's not, even if it's a sound tree. And Diane probably knows one tree that I can see very well from my house, this monstrous oak tree that hangs over the house just south of us that John used to own. You don't own it anymore, that you and John used to own it. I know you don't own it anymore, and I would never ask the... Yeah, it would make you very nervous, yes. Well, and well, it might. And it would be a very good candidate for a legacy tree as a tree. But boy, if it ever comes down, it is going to crush that house, and depending on which way it falls, it's going to take part of ours too. So I think that, and your comment that, one might have a memorial service on the sidewalk outside of the owner's house after the tree was gone didn't make me feel any better about it, frankly. So I'm proposing an amendment, and I have put copies of this on everybody's desk, but but basically it's just to amend the section for the removal of a legacy tree, just to say that if an owner if the legacy tree is on somebody's property, that they don't have to prove or demonstrate that it's healthy or that it's diseased or an imminent risk, but that they may simply remove it at their as they wish. I guess I have maybe three. I guess I have an instinctive reason. It just feels to me extremely intrusive. Different people have different aspects of where, public and private boundaries are. This just felt to be very intrusive. But secondly, I guess I'm reluctant to, for the city to be put in a position of effectively urging somebody. Any really big tree might be a hazard, even if it's perfectly healthy. And I just feel, I just don't feel comfortable for public to urge somebody to keep a tree that they don't want on their property. I guess I wanted to ask an attorney question. If there's public policy that discourages people from removing a tree, and the tree does do damage, are we incurring a legal liability?
If there's something present in the tree itself, maybe a small partial diseasing of the tree, about which the city is made aware and about which the city may, as a city, have some concern, and that tree, and the city doesn't do anything but yet compels, or as you put it, shames a homeowner into retaining the tree on the property, there is some risk exposure. How great it is, because obviously it's on private property and we are not responsible for trees on private property falling. But if we are in the process of compelling or urging somebody to keep a tree that has a potential, and there are some trees that don't have deep or wide root structures, and in heavy winds, especially if the soil is moist, and we've all seen them wherever we've been, these trees that have come down, there may be some liability. Is it high? I don't think so, but it's there.
Yes.
Eric, not to try to change your mind, but to give you a little bigger picture on why we were looking for public input on the removal of these trees, is our perception is the community trees, especially these matriarch trees of a neighborhood, physically grow outside the property owner's boundaries, and psychologically they're outside the boundaries of the property. And so the idea was to allow a healing process, a communication process, to have the city facilitate a communication process of that neighborhood, of everybody around the neighborhood that is interested in that tree. Now, they may tell a story about how they grew up and played under the tree. They may tell a story about how the previous owner loved the tree. They may say, you have every right to remove that tree, and I don't disagree with you, and I want to support you. The owner also has a right to say, hey, look, this is what I'd like to do with my property. Look at it as though you live on my property, and I want to do such and such, and that's why I want to remove the tree. So it's not just necessarily a lashing, if you will, but it's an open communication process that we are facilitating to have discussion on that particular tree. And we think that much like the Nelson Mandela trials, if you will, in Africa, that it does allow a healing process in the community for a decision like that the one person has sole control over, but yet a number of people feel very heartful for.
I'd like to also get clarification, if I could. As I recall, during the assessment of the trees by the Arbor Division, one of the concerns, or one of the things that's evaluated, is whether the tree is in a safe location that does not become a threat potentially to property. Am I correct in that?
There's a risk assessment that's
a risk assessment. And so my guess is that the risk assessment would probably spot a tree that might have the concern that Mr. Jacobson brought up.
The answer to that couldn't be yes and no. It's a ground-assessed risk assessment. So a full risk assessment should be done throughout the entire tree from top to bottom. But this is a ground observation only.
Okay. All right.
So there's a chance of maybe missing some things.
All right, Diane.
Section 13 focuses on delisting the healthy designated tree.
Right.
Was that not, that didn't work for you?
Well, so what I guess what I'm suggesting is that, and you know, I did craft an amendment, that that property owner may delist a legacy tree and not have to go through the hearing and the advisory process. So, if I may, let me just put that in the form of a motion, and if it dies, it dies. But I really would like to. I just want to be on record for that, and you know, if it dies, I'll still vote for passage of the whole thing. But I probably won't let any of my trees be nominated for legacy trees.
All right, so that's been a motion by Eric Jacobson. Does his adjustment to Section 12 have a second? All right, so I haven't seen one. So, okay, thank you very much for your comment, but I guess that fails for a second.
Okay.
All right, maybe I should step aside. I wonder if, Brandon, could you share the meeting while I bring up a comment?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. You had distributed some stuff, so
yeah,
I'm
and
glad
could I
to-
have a copy of it? Because I gave mine to everybody else.
Absolutely.
All right. And then again, you know, this is just for comment. So if I could speak.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right. There were two things. Okay, there were three things that I asked about that people consider in an email, and I want to bring them up to public discussion. And one of them, the Arbor Division did. It really described what a notable tree is and how that fits into the program. And my concern was that there's a lot of really interesting trees in town, and if we're only thinking about legacy trees, we're missing so many interesting trees in our community. But through the notable tree designation, these are being marked and recorded, and we can find them in our community. So that satisfies my interest, and I really appreciate your
Good idea.
bringing that comment forward. There were just two other things. I would like to propose an amendment, and I think we might as well discuss it. And my amendment was that we have engaged, we've helped property owners in the past prepare property for redevelopment. And in certain instances, we've had really significant trees on these properties. And many times when a property is prepared for development, and we don't really know what the development is going to be, it's just that the land is being cleared, maybe a building is coming down, and the land is, the property is going to be kind of in a fallow, unspecified use for a while until a developer comes along and makes a plan. If we had a plan for the property, we probably would have more information about how we could advise the property owner, but where the city has donated energy and money to the preparation of a property for development, I'd like there to be a review of the property for a potential legacy tree nomination, and to encourage the property owner to consider such a tree rather than perhaps clear-cutting it with no consideration. So my amendment was this: trees located on properties receiving redevelopment or demolition assistance by the City of Urbana shall be evaluated by the city arborist for possible legacy tree status. The property owner shall be encouraged to work with the city to accommodate the preservation of those trees meriting this nomination in the redevelopment plan of the property and eligible to receive benefits offered through the program. And that amendment, I thought, could be useful to the ordinance. This is intended to encourage property owners to participate in the legacy tree program and to protect the property from clear-cutting lots where no specific development plan is available for evaluation by the planning director or the planning commission. So I'm making a motion that be a consideration, that we talk about that. And again, like Eric, we don't know, what the favor of the council is.
Okay. Charlie.
I'll second that. And if I could speak to the second.
Yep, go ahead.
First, I think it probably belongs in section 11. And while staff goes and looks at it, it strikes me that this is why that it's exactly this issue that started this whole process. As you may recall, it was trees at the corner of Race and University that got us talking about this in exactly this kind of situation. We were providing development assistance, and we asked that a couple of trees one's on private property and one is on public property, that two very significant old trees not be taken down if at all possible. And so it strikes me that that's why we're here today, 3 years later, from that discussion. I think it's been about 3 years, right, Mike? Yeah, since we had that. So it strikes me, is section 11 an appropriate place to put this? And you may need to do a little wordsmithing on it, I suspect. But anyway, I'm in agreement.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think the way Dennis, the handout that you gave said, it said like this would go to legal and they could word it appropriately. Maybe I'll just ask a question to make sure I'm clear. It sounds like what we're saying is anytime there's redevelopment assistance or demolition assistance, we would do the quick assessment to see if any trees seem eligible, and we'd notify the owner. But in terms of the power to make the decision, it still is the case of the property owner. I mean, we'll give them information. We'll tell them that you have a great tree and you could be eligible to be part of this program, but ultimately it still is the property owner decision here, just like in the rest of the program. Is that your
That was my intent, but it was also that we would encourage them to use it as an asset on the property and to align future building construction or parking lot construction to include the tree rather than to eliminate it.
Any other council member comments or questions on this one? Robert?
I think designers usually do that anyway when they start looking at sites. But I think when you try to encourage them to try to work around, let's say, like a huge tree or something, that might be problematic in terms of cost for them.
Let me respond by saying that the Busey Estate property, which was between Green Street and Elm Street near Kohler, had multiple large trees on it. It was the house was surrounded by what could almost be called a variety of huge trees, and the property owner wanted to clear cut all of them to put up a 3-story apartment building with underground parking. And the neighborhood was so outraged that they were able to save one tree, which is a huge ginkgo tree, which is probably going to be a legacy tree nominee. But that tree wouldn't exist today if there hadn't been some intervention. And so I'm just suggesting that intervention sometimes is very good, and we're not holding the property owners' feet to the fire, but we're trying to educate them about the value of their trees. And some of the people in the community would probably love to see this opportunity included.
Oh, I just made that suggestion because I think sometimes it is problematic in terms of design, and sometimes the tree has to go.
I'm just hoping that we have very creative people who can work around such benefits to the property.
Yeah, with deep pockets.
Okay, Diane.
Well, I'm okay with this as long as it's voluntary like the other program, and that's where I think the valuation of the tree or trees would be really helpful to a potential developer to know what assets that are there on the property.
Yeah, the iTree program also gives information on sort of a monetary value to ecosystem services that a tree provides on the site in terms of rainwater and cost savings and heating. So that can also be monetized. So it's interesting.
So we should have both in our inventory, a value for the tree and right.
Okay, great. Any other council member comments on this amendment? Okay, so the motion is to basically add those couple sentences Dennis read and run that through staff so that we would see that when this would come to council. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries.
And I have one more.
Dennis?
And maybe this is, again, this is just for discussion. There was a discussion about ways that we could promote people, we could encourage people and create incentives for people to participate in the program. And usually the greatest incentive is when an individual can either save money or earn credits of some kind by participation. And it was suggested by, not myself, but some, perhaps, I can't remember, somebody in the tree commission perhaps, that one thought might be that by participating, there could be an abatement for a single year of the city's stormwater utility fee for those property owners willing to certify a legacy tree on their property. This would be a cost savings to them, which might tip the balance between preserving a tree or not preserving a tree as an incentive. I don't know if 5 bales of wood chips, mulch, is strong enough an incentive. So this is just a stronger possible incentive, and we don't expect to have very many a year, so we wouldn't be probably seeing this happen on private property very often. This would not apply, well, I don't know if it would apply to the city or not, city trees. But I don't think it's a huge loss as of income to the city, and it might be a great gain for the arbor, for the canopy of trees. And so as an incentive, I would move that we consider this abatement for a single year. So that's a motion that I make.
Okay. Is there a second or any questions about that? Okay, there's a second. Any discussion? Mayor?
I think it's a really bad idea. If you want to give an incentive, I would pick something other than the stormwater utility fee, because that is a uniform thing, and if you're just opening up a huge can of worms here.
Any other council member comments? Charlie?
Not sure why that would be. It's maybe $60 one
I'm
year.
talking about uniformity.
Across the board.
Everybody pays this, and there's a lot of people that think that they should be exempt from it, and I think that this is a very bad motion to have. If you want to give an incentive, you could pick something else, but do not.
Okay, we could look at rain barrels and.
We could look at, do not look at the stormwater utility fee, please.
Eric?
Yeah, I intend to vote against this particular motion, and I concur with the mayor. Yeah, I think something. Yeah, I mean, let's figure out something else.
Any other comments or questions?
Over here.
Dennis?
Well, I appreciate the spirit of considering something else. And I'm not wed to this, and it wasn't originally my suggestion. But if the council can come up with an alternative thought on this that would be an inducement, it would be great to add it before we make a final vote next week. And I'll try to put some thought into it, but maybe other people will have a thought too.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions? Bill?
Just a caution, that is, as I understand this program, it's a program to be funded with outside sources, monies. So if we're adding an incentive, that's going to add to the challenge of raising those dollars to fund the program.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments before we vote? Okay, so the motion was to add this stormwater incentive. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, say nay.
No.
Okay. The nays have it. Any other discussion on the overall? Yeah. Any other discussion on this overall Legacy Tree program, or are people ready to talk about sending it to council? Okay. So maybe a motion would be in order. I don't think we got an original
Move to send to
motion.
council with a recommendation for approval with the one amendment.
Tonight's
Second.
amendment. Okay, there's a motion and second. Any final discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries, and I think my time as chair here is done. Dennis,
Thank
I'll
you.
hand it
Very
back.
Thank you,
kindly.
guys.
Thank you.
It's hard to be an advocate and be a chairman at the same time.
It's only taken us 3 years, but we got it done. King Park Public Art Project.
Yeah, okay. King Park Public Art Project, we have 3 parts to it. Resolution number 2013-04-015R, a resolution authorizing and approving a mutual release with AWAKA LCC. And then a resolution number, same number ending in 016R, a resolution authorizing and approving a new agreement with Preston Jackson for public art design services for King Park Public Art Project. And finally, an ordinance 2013-04-028, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance concerning King Park Public Arts projects. And we have Christina from the Public Arts Commission to guide us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to address all of these agenda items together since they all are interrelated. The last you heard about this project was August 20th, 2012, when the Urbana City Council approved a agreement for public art design services with Douglas Kornfeld, doing business under the name Awaka LLC. Since that time, Mr. Kornfeld made an initial visit to Urbana in September, where he met with and presented his work to folks from the neighborhood and attended community meetings, visited the school, etc. He then presented a preliminary concept in November of 2012, and that was included in your packet, but that concept was called Dreamers, and I'll just refresh your memory on what that looked like. Oops, it's shown right here. The selection committee that had recommended Mr. Kornfeld for this project reviewed this project, and this picture here shows what the finish would look like for this proposal. And they felt that this particular concept, Dreamers, did not reflect the active spirit of Dr. King that they had hoped that this project would really capture the spirit of. And again, that selection committee included representatives from the Public Arts Commission subcommittee for the project, city staff, Urbana Park District staff, a representative from the Urbana Park District Board, Robert Lewis was there, a representative from 40 North 88 West, a representative from the King Park neighborhood, and also Principal Jennifer Ivory Tatum of King School sent her comments via email. So following receiving this feedback, Mr. Kornfeld agreed to assemble a reworked concept for review. However, on January 7th, 2013, city staff was contacted by the artist who indicated that he was resubmitting this concept and he would like this to be reviewed again, or he would like to withdraw from the project. So the subcommittee met again and, discussed what some of their options might be. They discussed, accepting this concept. They discussed returning to the 3 other finalists from the initial selection process, or working with a new artist on the project. They came to the unanimous conclusion that this concept just did not fit what they saw being as important for this project. I mean, they really felt that this project is about celebrating the active spirit of what Dr. Martin Luther King accomplished and inspired in others. So they also wanted to have staff contact 3 other finalists from the initial selection process, who were Chris Fennell, Aaron Hussey, and Preston Jackson. And of those finalists, Preston Jackson, who is a visual artist based in Peoria, Illinois, responded with interest and was the committee's top choice. So I worked with the city legal division to create the attached mutual release for this project so that we could, in fact, allow Mr. Kornfeld to withdraw from the project. The Public Arts Commission unanimously approved the selection committee's recommendation to reject this Dreamers concept and recommended approval of this particular mutual release between the city and the artist, and that was during their February meeting, February 12th. There's no fiscal impact for that because Mr. Kornfeld was given a design fee of $5,000 to create a design, and so because this fee was already paid, there's no fiscal impact associated with that. I'll move on now to talking more about Preston Jackson, which is part of the next resolution. When we did this selection process, we received a pretty good response. We received over 40 applicants, and of those, 4 artists were identified, one of which was Mr. Jackson, and all of those artists were interviewed. Mr. Jackson, whose work I will bring up here, as I said before, is a visual artist who's based in Illinois. He's done work for many municipalities in Illinois, and the committee really liked him during the first interview process, but because he works primarily in bronze, there was real concern that he wouldn't be able to deliver the kind of high-profile piece that the commission hoped could be achieved in the King Park and Lincoln Avenue corridor. So you see some of his work here.
That's nice stuff.
However, when I spoke with Mr. Jackson about how he might approach this project with a $45,000 project budget, he said that he could work in stainless steel with bronze elements, which is sort of similar to this piece that you see here. And he recommended this material because it would weather well as allow for the large piece that they would like. He's taught at several schools in Illinois, including the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Bradley University, and Millikan University. As you can see, his work particularly deals with American history and the African American experience. I spoke to some of the arts administrators that he's worked with in Illinois, and all of them had very high praise for his work and, meeting deadlines, staying on budget. And you actually can see him in a lot of these because I think he included himself in the pictures for scale. So there he is. This is another one with stainless steel and bronze elements. And then here's one of Dr. King that he did. Working with city legal staff in consultation with the Park District, we've negotiated a public art design services agreement with Mr. Jackson to guide the development of public art for King Park. Again, this is to really fit these goals that were outlined in the original RFQ, which was included in the packet. The agreement outlines the scope of Mr. Jackson's design services, including deliverables, schedule of performance, schedule of compensation, and the process of design approval. The schedule of compensation has been staggered so that compensation is received following completion of discrete tasks. This agreement serves only to contract Mr. Jackson to create a design for the project. Upon approval of a final design and plan for fabrication and installation, an addendum may be negotiated between the artist and the city to commission the actual production of the piece. The Public Arts Commission reviewed this agreement during their April 2nd meeting, and they unanimously recommended approval with a few changes for consistency between the agreement and deliverables, and what you had in your packet reflected those changes. I'll now move on to the budget amendment. While $45,000 remains in the project budget following the agreement with the original artist, Douglas Kornfeld, and a potential $30,000 has been identified as being available in TIF 3 funds for the potential use of this project. Upon council approval of the proposed budget amendment revising the annual budget ordinance, these funds will be committed to the project and will allow for a significantly enhanced project, more similar to some of these examples that you see here. Many of these projects had budgets up to $200,000. However, Mr. Jackson has assured staff that $30,000 will go a long way in producing a project with the many intricate details that you see here in his work. I mean, he's really known for sort of creating these narrative vignettes in his work. And the Public Arts Commission really believes that such artistic depictions of history will appeal to residents and visitors of all ages, which is important since the site is right near a school, creating an asset for the neighborhood and honoring the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Are there any questions that I might answer?
Are there? I'd like to. Okay. Thank you.
Where will the sculpture be located, actually?
The sculpture will be located in King Park, so it's right on Lincoln
But
Avenue.
will it be visible from Lincoln Avenue, or is it closer to the school, which is
The
way
idea
off?
is for it to be visible from Lincoln Avenue, since that's such a gateway to Urbana. However, we've been working very closely with King School on this project. They have a lot of support for this project, and the Public Arts Commission hopes to support some educational programming in the school to celebrate this new piece, and that teachers will bring kids over to see the work.
So it will be on Lincoln Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. And where did the $30,000 come from?
That was identified in TIF 3, and it was additional money that was left over. It had been earmarked for other projects, but because that TIF district expires December 31st of 2013, it's now available.
Okay.
Great.
So the total spent on this will be 75? Or
75.
And that includes the $6,000 artist fee?
That's correct.
Okay. And let's stick with Tom.
I'm sorry. The total spent on the project will actually be 80. That includes the 5 that was paid to Mr. Kornfeld. So when all is said and done, it'll be 80. But the project budget with Mr. Preston Jackson will be 75.
I've got a comment too.
Sure.
I've actually seen this gentleman's art previous to this, in Peoria and along the riverfront, and took photographs of it, thinking it was very intriguing art. So I find it really interesting that this gentleman's going to be doing something, very likely going to be doing something in our city, and I think it's. I think that the one thing that the Arts Commission might decide is He does work very much in kind of a lattice work, kind of in small detail vignettes, like you said. I mean, this is pretty typical of what I saw along the riverfront. So if the intent is something monumental, as opposed to more decorative in scope, as far as like the elements, you might want to give Mr. Jackson direction in that direction. What you're really looking for. There's a lot of difference in the monumentality of some of his pieces. Another one of his pieces can be seen in Decatur, I believe. I think it's Decatur. It has to do with the Lincoln site, and so his work is very interesting to me. But I think a little direction about how monumental you want this piece might be useful in guiding him, because he hasn't designed it yet, I guess. So I'm just saying that. All right, Robert Lewis.
Christina, you might inform the general public the scenario that we ran into when we tried to talk about the criteria for sculptures related to Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And the dilemma we ran across in terms of how we set criteria.
Right. Well, what Councilman Lewis is referring to is the sort of unique constraints we've had with this project, which is that we cannot use the likeness or quotes of Martin Luther King due to significant fees that the King Foundation requires for that use. For instance, the fairly recent King Memorial in Washington, D.C., I believe they had to pay something like $80,000 or more in fees just to use that likeness. So obviously it's a little beyond our budget to do something like that. So what we'll end up with will not be the literal likeness of Dr. King, but what we're hoping for is a piece of art that will really capture, the spirit of what Dr. King stands for.
Thank you. Very good. That helps. Anybody else? Comments?
I'm browsing through his work, and one of the types of things that he does are sort of life-size figures that invite people, kids especially, to sit next to the figures and interact with them. And I'm just thinking of, like, the dream of the two children in his speech, of going to school together. And I'm looking at a piece of his actually that's like that. And there are other kids who have decided to get in the picture. So if there's something that symbolically refers to his vision or his words, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential directions that the artist could go in, and I think it's a pretty fertile ground for interpretation, and a creative person can come up with a lot of potential solutions to what might seem like a problem at first, but I think sometimes, design constraints actually breed more creativity.
Absolutely. Charlie.
I'm all for going forward on this. My only concern is the timing. Is there, as long as we obligate it by December 31st, we can spend it? Is that?
Well, according to our TIF attorney, just to be safe, we should not just obligate it, but we should physically spend the money before December 31st. I think there's probably a couple different interpretations statewide on TIF funds, but just to be safe, our TIF attorney is saying obligate it and spend it by December 31st.
So, which brings me to the question, can Mr. Jackson get this done?
Mr. Jackson seems very confident that he can get this done, and he seems like he's raring to go. They keep asking, like, when can we start? When can we come to Urbana? And
well,
I think
I move that we send these three things to council with recommendation for approval.
Second.
All right. Okay, and any other discussion on this? All right, seeing none. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, that goes to council with approval.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That should be
Congratulations,
extremely
by the way.
Oh, thank you.
All right, let's go to Resolution 2013-04017R, resolution approving the City of Urbana and the Urbana Home Consortium Annual Action Plan for the fiscal year 2013 to 14. Kelly, greetings.
Yes, before you is the fiscal year 2013-2014 Annual Action Plan. As funding allocation amounts have not yet been determined, due to the sequestration order issued on March 1st and per direction from HUD's website and their deputy secretary, we can expect that both the CDBG and home programs will have a 5% reduction from fiscal year 12-13. So the estimated allocation is for the CDBG program is $344,512, and the home program is $737,437. In the event that official notification is received from HUD regarding the actual allocations before the AAP is approved by Council and HUD, the budgets would be adjusted and Council would be notified of the changes. If notification is received after submission to HUD and the allocations differ significantly from the budget amounts, then an amendment to the AAP would be required, and that's per our consolidated plan. So as you can see on page 2 of the memo is a summary of the different activities under the Community Development Block Grant and their projected funding amounts. Most of the activities are funded below last year's level, except for program delivery, which was increased in order to assist with personnel costs, since there is no cap for these funds, which the administration and public service both have a cap. So we were able to shift personnel costs under the program delivery. And then starting on page 4 of the memo shows the home program and the budget, and again all of these programs show a reduction in funding as well, since the anticipated allocation for home program is also reduced by 5%. So failure to submit the AAP by May 15th deadline could result in a delay in accessing of funds, which could create a burden to the city. So staff and the Community Development Commission is requesting approval of the ordinance approving the AAP.
All right, so that's the presentation. Is there comments? Yes, Brandon.
Maybe a quick question. So with the shift of personnel costs, is it still the case that overall CDBG and home will cover as much personnel in our next fiscal year as they had previously? So
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so the city's general fund doesn't yet have to pick up the slack.
Right, yes. We have been working on the budget, and so...
okay.
Don't you think we should mention about our vacancy? The administrative assistant. Oh, yes. Yeah, part of the being able to, because of the reduction, is that we do have an opening. Our administrative assistant position is still open, and that will probably remain open for a while. Okay. So, so we do have funds that cover the 4 staff that are in the program in the division right now.
Okay, thanks.
Charlie.
Another quick one. I noticed that we're taking $4,000 from social services, which is not a it's a small amount of money, but it's significant. Is there any reason we couldn't take that from property acquisition? Why can't we maintain that at $9,000?
Because the consolidated social service funding and also like the neighborhood cleanup and our transitional housing are all part of the public service, which is a cap. So we have to make sure that we stay under that cap, and when the allocation is reduced, then the cap is less as well. So
Okay, and Brandon, could you take the chair for one more time?
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
Okay, because I've got a question. Yeah, I saw that that it looked like the neighborhood cleanup was reduced to $2,000 from the previous $8,000 last year, and that it might require the service to be dropped to be one time a year. It's such a popular program. has participation dwindled? Is that why you feel confident, or is it just a total thing about the fact is that we don't have the money to support 2 a year?
The more that it's more of the funding versus the
Yes.
number of people, because we have pretty steady attendance.
Yeah.
So.
And it's a killer when I'm actually in the neighborhood that benefits from that, and it was a killer for me when I had out of town business the weekend of that collection, and so I've still got all kinds of stuff in my garage that I'm just dwindling my space and time and energy. But so I mean I saw that, and there's one other aspect of it, which is at the very back of this huge memo that you gave us. 2 pages from the back, at page 5, there's a kind of a discussion in that has to do with general grants for households for acquiring property. It's the down payment assistance, I think, program, and the focus. The focus had earlier been to try to serve, to assist people in acquiring, making a down payment to own a home who had incomes that were 50% below 50% of the median family income. But because there were more delays in finding, I guess, the appropriate applicants, the decision was made to raise the level of median family income for applicants to 80%. So my concern was, I'll just say it, is that it's the least, it's those people who are least able to afford entering into a home that we are most concerned with. And if you have 80% of the median family income, you're in much better shape to direct your star and to guide your ship to a safe port. Maybe you also are then maybe a more secure applicant. I don't know. But I just wonder about the choice of changing the target population from those who are the poorest to those who are like semi-poor.
Actually, that is under number 11 here on the agenda.
Oh, so that's going to come later.
Yes, it will become, yeah, this is specifically on the annual action plan, so yeah, we have.
Okay. I just got my things out of order then.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Thank you then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then Dennis, the chair is yours.
Okay, so having said that and being erroneous, we'll go back to discussing item number 9, a resolution concerning the Home Consortium Annual Action Plan.
Move to send to council with recommendation for approval.
Okay. Robert Lewis, seconds. Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's sent. Okay, how about number 10, ordinance number 2013-04029, ordinance approving modifications to the City of Urbana Home Consortium for the year 2011 to 12 annual action plan. These are the down payment programs.
I'll
Yes.
have Jen talk about that.
Okay, please do that.
The Urbana Home Consortium has been reviewing our commitments as we do every year, and in calculating that, we realized that the City of Urbana needs to commit an additional $117,000 by the end of July, I believe, in order to meet our commitment deadline imposed by HUD. And in looking at some of the program options that we usually list in our annual action plan, and kind of what the unmet need is that's out there, staff has proposed a down payment assistance program, which we're very excited about. We did consider a few other programs. We looked very closely at acquisition rehabilitation, which the City of Champaign has performed in the past, but they also had significantly larger funds than we do at this time, so we'd really only be able to assist 3 households at best with the funding that's available. And we also just did an amendment for tenant-based rental assistance for $383,000. So all of our entities that are carrying out that activity are kind of maxed out at the moment, and they can't take on any other cases based on the workload that they have. So in looking at, other ideas, what's the best way to assist the most households, staff discussed the opportunity to do a one-time down payment assistance program. The program would, as proposed, assist approximately 10 to 14 families in Urbana. It would provide down payment and closing cost assistance in the amount of 10% of the purchase price up to $10,000 per household. So we're excited at the prospect of being able to make homeownership available in Urbana in a way that isn't necessarily available to our municipalities specifically. We had a few other down payment assistance programs that were offered through the state, which have kind of fallen by the wayside. The Assist Urbana program has unfortunately lagged behind. They had difficult bond market. They had a problem with their master servicer, so that program has not actually moved forward at all. They have not assisted homeowners or home buyers in the past 2 years. They are hoping to start the program up again, which we'll discuss on a later agenda item, but that's sort of a lack that we saw in the community, that usually that program assists maybe a dozen families each year, and so the last 2 years, it's 24 families that haven't received assistance. So in saying that, anybody who has income levels below 80% of the median family income would be eligible for these funds. They'd have to be pre-approved for a fixed rate loan through a Champaign County lender. We wanted to keep it local in our proposal. And the funds would come with a 5-year affordability period, which is secured through a mortgage. So at the end of that 5 years, if the families maintain the home as their principal residence, that is then forgiven. And then we did review this at our City Commission meeting on March 26th, and it was unanimously forwarded to City Council with the recommendation for approval. So I can take any questions.
All right, is there other comments then?
Any questions?
Yeah, Diane.
Is there a cap or a maximum on the price of the home that would qualify for this?
There is. We're kind of unique because we are lumped in with the city of Chicago and all of Chicagoland. So our limit is actually very generous. It's something to the tune of $206,000, which we never see our low-income buyers, reach that. They can't afford those kinds of homes. They can generally only afford around $80,000 mortgages based on the income limits that are available. That might stretch for some of the larger families. As a family size gets larger, they can make more money and can probably secure larger mortgage, obviously, but more than likely you'd be looking at homes probably between $180,000 to maybe $130,000 max, and that's kind of similar to what we did with the American Dream Down Payment Initiative, which was also before the housing bubble, so people maybe could have afforded a little more than they can now.
And how do you verify that it's owner-occupied during that time?
Well, there are several ways that we do it. We do look and see where the tax bill is being sent. So we'll check the assessor's website and see that, the tax bill, if it's being sent to Florida or Arizona, that raises a red flag. It might be rented out. And then we also will send letters if we have concerns and just ask them to sign saying, I am living here, or we can also request utility bills to see that the bill is in the owner's name.
So this will be done on like a year-to-year basis?
Yeah, on an annual basis. It's required by HUD.
Other questions? Is there a motion then?
So moved.
All right. I didn't get that. Who did what? But
I did.
Okay, Eric and.
No. My surrounding
Okay,
compatriots.
Robert and.
Skip
Charlie.
one octave above.
All right, other discussion? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That forwards to council. Number 11, resolution number 2013-04-018R, a resolution amending Housing Rehabilitation Program operational guidelines as originally authorized by the resolution number 2010-04-10R.
Jen will talk about this one too.
Okay, Jen.
So I've had the unique opportunity, since we have that open administrative assistant position, to go on some home visits, a lot of home visits, and I've really enjoyed my time with Randy, meeting the community and seeing the people that we serve. But in doing, taking applications and seeking households that are interested in our housing rehabilitation program, I did notice that we lost a few applicants just in the short time that I've been, tagging along with Randy, who wanted to participate in the housing rehab program, but decided to back out because they didn't want to secure the private financing or they could not. So based on we've been getting funds coming back, cycling back through this program, because it's been running since the 90s now. And as I described in the memo, we have sort of two options based on your income level. So the first program is a grant deferred loan program, and we, as the city, through Home Funds, provides a $12,500 grant that's provided for the rehabilitation cost. That's kind of free and clear. There's no strings attached there. And then we also provide a $12,500 loan, and it's a deferred loan that's provided through city financing, which is through the Home Funds. And that is only available to you if you are at or below 50% of the median family income. For those that are in between 50 and 80% of the median family income, which is still low income, just slightly higher on the scale, you have the option of, you can get the grant, so we give you a $12,500 grant to, invest into your home and bring it up to code. But that latter half, you are required to go and seek that private financing. So in reviewing kind of how much funds have been coming in, I think this past year we had around $37,000 that came back to us, because when you actually sell your home, we put the deferred loan on your house, and then when you go to sell it, that's when we get the funds back. So it's kind of like, we don't collect interest, it's 0%, it just stays there until you sell, in the hopes that, your value has gone up and it just pays for itself. So in getting those funds cycling back into the housing rehab program, we've kind of been falling behind on spending some of the money, which is why we just presented the down payment assistance program, which is great. But it made sense to staff, if we have the funds, why are we requiring people to go get the city financing if we have the Home Funds available to offer the grant deferred loan program to everyone? So that was sort of the thought process behind it. So this would basically eliminate the grant installment loan piece or option, and it would open up the grant deferred loan program to anybody who's at or below 80%. So there are questions there. Oh, and this was also unanimously forwarded by the CDC.
Okay, Brandon.
My only question was, if you ever get to a point where you don't have enough funds to go around, would you then either put the people who are below 50% kind of at the top of the waiting list, or do something to make sure that if we're ever short on funds, the people who need it the most get them first?
Yeah, we do have a whole prioritization process that we follow, and I think some of the parameters are, your income level, where you're at, and how, what condition your house is in, that sort of thing. Do you have kids who are under 6? Are there lead risks involved? That sort of thing. So there is a, set prioritization schedule to that end, and this isn't necessarily a permanent change. It's something we wanted to try. We have the funds. Why not make this available at this time, since it seems like an opportunity is available?
Okay, other comments or questions? Yeah, Charlie.
And we'll find out next year how well it works.
Sure.
For all these all these changes.
Yeah, if your family is already interested, once they find this out, they'll be very eager, I have a feeling, to participate.
I move to send this to council with recommendation for approval.
Second.
Okay, Charlie, and seconded by Eric. Other discussion? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous because there's no nays. Any nays? None. Can't assume things. All right, so that also forwards to council. Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, resolution number 2013-04-019R, resolution evidencing the intention of the City of Urbana, Champaign County, Illinois, to transfer volume cap in connection with the private activity bond issues, multiple family revenue bonds, and related matters private bond cap allocations for EIEDA Series 2013. Kelly
Yes.
again.
Before you is the resolution to allocate the city's private activity bond cap, which we do every year, to the Eastern Illinois Economic Development Authority. As noted in the memo, each municipality in Illinois, per the IRS code, is allowed to issue private activity bonds for 2013, and the bond cap has to be allocated or reserved before May 1st. Otherwise, the state can then take it. So for 2013, the City of Urbana has a total of $3,944,210, which is available for various activities such as affordable housing programs or multifamily affordable housing projects. Last year, the city's bond cap was ceded to the Eastern Illinois Economic Development Authority. As alluded to earlier, the Assist Urbana Homebuyer Assistance Program ceased operating in 2011, and because of the non-performance of the program for the last several years, and then a concern about the feasibility for 2013 2013, staff is not recommending that the bond cap be ceded to this organization. And we are also not recommending ceding the bond cap to the Illinois Housing Development Authority. In the past, we would cede the bond cap to them, and they would create special homebuyer assistance programs for Urbana. And they said that they would not be forming any special programs as they had done in the past. So staff and the Community Development Commission recommend the city's bond cap be ceded to the Eastern Illinois Economic Development Authority for 2013.
And that's so we don't lose that potential funding?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Yes, Diane.
Just a question. I understand why we'd want to cede this, and your memo states that we could possibly access these funds if we needed them for a project. So how likely is that?
I think it would be fairly likely. I know that through the EIEDA, there was a project that was completed over in Champaign at the old Howard Johnson Eden place, I think, and also there's been possible other projects, housing projects as well. When I had contacted them to see if through the executive director if they were still interested in our bond cap, so if a project did come, we would be able to contact them and move forward with their process.
Okay. Other questions for Kelly at this time? Yes, Diane.
I'd move approval of resolution number 2013-4-09R with the recommendation to send it to council for approval.
Great. Okay.
Done
thanks.
deal.
All right. Any other comments before we take a vote? Okay, those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that forwards to council. Yes, Brandon Browse.
On this next one, to avoid conflict of interest or the appearance thereof, I will abstain from any discussion or action. And
Okay, we've got 2 abstentions here.
Poor baby. We got enough folks?
We have 4 out of, yeah, it could happen.
It could happen.
All right, then we'll go to ordinance number 2013-04030, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class AA liquor licenses for Eastland Suites Urbana, LCC, DBA Eastland Suites, 1907 North Cunningham Avenue. And Mayor, are you going to comment on this one as liquor commissioner? Or?
I recommend approval.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. We have a person who wants to speak. So Raymond Caressa? Sarisa. Well, I killed your name, but you're welcome to step forward anyway. Tell us where you live, and you have 5 minutes to comment.
All right. My name's Raymond Sarisa. I'm the general manager at Eastland Suites Hotel and Conference Center in Urbana. I'm actually a resident of Bloomington, Illinois, at 605 Woolbrun in Bloomington. I don't really have much to say. I just wanted to be available in case you had any questions of why we're applying for a change in class of liquor license at Eastland Suites. I've been there about 3 years. I've been with our company for 12, and our current license only allows us to serve alcohol Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. till 8 p.m., and then during special events as well. If we have a banquet or a wedding reception or whatnot, we're allowed to open our bar and serve alcohol there. So I'll be quick, a couple things. We get a lot of guests, especially during the week, they're blue collar. They're here on construction projects. 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Friday sometimes it's not enough time for them to have a couple beers. And what concerns me is, one of my priorities is protecting our guests. And we do offer a complimentary shuttle service, but there's times where, I know there's guests drinking at our bar, then getting up and leaving and driving down the road to another bar. So just the protection of our guests. We're also pushing all of our food and beverage department, putting a lot of money into the hotel with numerous different projects, including our kitchen. Right now, if we don't have an event during a Illini football game, a special event, we can't open our bar when the hotel is sold out because of our current liquor license. So also, if a traveler arrives checks in after 8 o'clock, wants a glass of wine before they go to bed, before they go to their room. They can't get it right now with what we have. So, really, that's all I have to say, and appreciate your time.
Great, great. Questions for this gentleman? Yes, Diane.
I recommend that we send ordinance number 2013-04-030 to council with a recommendation for approval.
I second that.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? All right, that goes to council with approval. And
Thank you.
And seeing no other business before the council committee of the whole, I adjourn us.